Did you tell them? I told them. Yeah. Are they going to wait? All right, the meeting will come to order. Normally, our first task is to approve the minutes. However, they are not fully prepared, so I'm going to suggest that we postpone it for a month.
Okay.
Okay? I don't know if we need to vote on that. Say what? Yes, thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Thanks, Sarah. The first case is 23-20. That's 2023-20. Crest Avenue, Hillside Avenue, et al.
You're going to skip that one.
However, we do not have the necessary complement committee personnel to vote on it. So we're going to skip that one for now. You're welcome to wait if somebody might show up, but it's probably not going to happen. So the next in line on the agenda is 2023-24, 179A Washington Avenue. The petitioners are Jesus Baltazar and Zanuga, I think, Escobar. Are they represented this evening?
Hola,
So
buenas noches.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening.
I'm sorry. Buenas noches, estoy acá para solicitar un permiso especial para poner un tattoo shop en Washington Avenue.
I'm here to solicit a special permit for a tattoo shop.
Okay, so this is a petition for recommendation on a special permit to open a tattooing and piercing business at 179A Washington Ave. As far as I can see, the office of John's office and the fire department and DPW do not have any comments on the proposal. Speaking for myself, I didn't have any comments on the proposal. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask the petitioner?
Because I don't have any paperwork. Yeah, could you pull up the visual? Because I don't have any paperwork on this.
I emailed all the
Oh, that's why I didn't print it. Oh, okay.
Okay, but would it be possible to pull up the?
Okay, now I get it. Now I remember now. I did look at it through my email. There was multiple emails. I did read this.
I definitely looked at it.
Yeah, I definitely looked at it. No, I just didn't print it.
Well, I have a hard copy.
Sure, you were better than me. Okay. Here we go. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I'll make a comment. It seems that the only reason that this is before us is because, according to the ordinance, tattoo shops aren't specifically mentioned in the types of businesses that are allowed here, but any, I guess, other businesses could be, so we just have to, that's the only reason that it's requiring a special permit. So for me, I think I'm happy to just vote to approve it.
I also am.
How many stations are you going to have?
Six of them.
What are the hours of operation?
De 11 a 10.
It's going to be from 9 to 10.
How many
9
days?
a.m. to 10 p.m.?
De 11 de la mañana a 10 de la noche.
11 a.m. to 10 p.m.
How many days? Every day?
Martes a domingo.
It's going to be from Tuesday through to Sunday.
So close.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation for the special permit with the standard conditions as applicable and as long as the applicant addresses the concerns raised by the Department of Public Works.
Okay, this is a motion to recommend the special permit.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Good luck.
So
Thank you so much.
We'll see you here December 12th.
Diciembre 12. Thank you so much.
Oh, that was the 19th.
19th is for the zoning board, planning board. 12th is the zoning board.
All right, the next petitioner is at 100 Captain's Row, Andrew Haddad, for a recommendation on a special permit seeking approval for the conversion of an existing first-floor commercial space to a residential unit.
Is this different than the previous submission? Okay, thanks.
Sarah, at the zoning board, it was noted that the plans that were submitted did not conform to what is in the field. There were doors that are in the field not shown on the plan.
I see, okay. Could we have one more over here? Oh,
We'll share, we'll share.
The chair did not get one,
Just to the chair.
and I need one for the record.
Thanks. You can have one. Okay, Andrew, hold forth.
Thank you for having us today. My name is Anthony Quiles, and I'm the builder for Andrew Haddad. And we're seeking today relief on a special permit to convert a non-conforming commercial use property to a conforming use property. So right now, commercial is non-conforming in the area, but residential and naval is conforming. So we're looking for that relief. When we look at the to the special permit, obviously we're looking at minimum lot size and the non-conforming. I'm sorry. I need my glasses. So the special permit, the previous when they built these properties, they went in front of the board for the same relief. So basically, every time anyone wants to do something that has to go in front of the board, they have to, go for the same relief. So the biggest issue here is that is a commercial space that we no longer want to use it as a commercial space. There is some supporting letters for some of the abutters, and there's also the letter from the condo association approving the conversion.
I got a question. I mean, there's only one access door? There's no two egresses into this building?
No, there's two
Because I noticed there's a lot of,
The window line, the windows are big enough to make we drew it as one access door.
Yeah, it's one access door right now. We're trying to keep the property exactly as it is with no changes to the appearance of the property itself.
So how, so do they only come in one door? Do they only come in that one? I'm a little confused how the two families or the two tenants are,
Oh, it's only one, it's only one unit,
Single family.
Single family.
single family.
oh, I misunderstood.
If you look at the second, if you look at the, that would be one unit, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom on the bottom of the floor plan.
Oh, okay, so it's just one unit.
Correct.
It's an existing and a proposed.
And how big is it?
But I think it's on the 962 square feet
Okay.
on the plans.
And you didn't include laundry?
Laundry is on the, should be drawn into the half bath. There's common laundry also in the main building across the courtyard.
And is it a condo or are you gonna rent it?
I live next door, it's gonna be a condo, but I'm gonna rent it.
Okay.
Is it assigned a parking spot?
There's 4 deeded spots with this one unit. Plenty.
And do they get to use the alley? Do they get the front and the back? I'm confused.
It's all, where the photo's taken, it's all a common courtyard
Okay.
that's existing at that particular condo association.
As well as the back? So you,
Correct, yep.
it's awful cute.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the standard provisions.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a clarification. May I make a clarification? So I just, at the zoning board hearing, we were informed by a resident of the 100 Kaplans Road that this unit is not permitted as a residential use under the condominium documents. Just let me finish. The board does not enforce condominium it just enforces the zoning. So any approval that you receive here is just relative to zoning. You still need to address the condo on a separate issue.
We have a letter from the condo association and also a vote that was done, I think it was in June, am I correct?
May 30th, I believe the document was recorded on the top of the plans I submitted.
Yeah. It's recorded in the registry of deeds.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate this. This board cannot grant you any rights beyond beyond zoning rights.
Yes, we understand, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, made and seconded.
Sorry, who made it?
I'll second it.
Sarah and Eric seconded.
Interesting floor plan. Right,
It's
I
like New
understand.
Orleans.
It's a challenging space.
It's like a shotgun house.
It's what?
It's like a shotgun house.
Shotgun house, I haven't heard that before.
That's a New Orleans term.
Okay, made and seconded
Shoot
to
to the house.
Okay.
recommend approval.
Called shotgun.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would like to recommend
Thank you.
another condition that no rental period less than 12 months.
Yes.
Correct.
Special permit is specific to the applicant. And if you were to, I guess, sell the property or with the special permit, the new owner would have to come back to the board.
I think
If
it's
you were
a-
to sell the property before actually completing the conversion.
Oh, okay. Before
Uh,
completing the conversion, okay.
I
Yeah.
think this is a strange situation to apply that, because if the property is sold, are they gonna turn it into like an office again? I don't think it makes any sense to apply.
But the
That
issue is
here.
only if they sell it, try and
Yeah,
sell it
if they
before
sell it, they can-
completing the conversion.
Yeah.
So he's saying that that they can't sell the
I-
permit before.
I understand, yeah. It's if you sell before the conversion, which is not gonna happen, it's fine.
No, I plan on keeping it and renting it.
That's fine.
So yeah, I'm fine with adding that condition as well. Should we go back and maybe do the motion again? So we would vote to approve the recommendation for the special permit with the standard conditions as applicable. If the applicant addresses the concerns raised by the Department of Public Works under the condition that if this property is sold before completing the conversion, that a new owner would have to come before the board again. And there was one more. John, was there one more condition you mentioned?
Standard conditions as applicable, address the concerns raised by the DPW, no rental period less than 12 months.
No rental period less than 12 months.
Yep.
I'll second it. Thanks for clarifying that, sir.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
So you're back here December 12th.
December 12th.
Can't do 1100 Bear Beach Parkway.
Okay.
Yes, please, thank you.
Yeah. He asked if he could come, because these guys want to leave. Tuck,
I mean,
they want to, I think,
You have to skip this one.
Which
wants
one?
to
You
talk
have to
to us.
skip this one as well, because it's a site plan.
Right, but, oh, right, okay.
Could be adorable. It's very,
All right, the next petitioner is 19 to 21 High Street. The petitioner is 19 High Street Development LLC.
oh, we're going to 27?
Yes, we can't do 26. Yes.
Would-
The board cannot hear it right now. We're
Oh,
waiting
I'm
for an-
sorry, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, you can, I'm sorry, you can. You've got 6 members, Sarah can vote on this one.
So I'll,
We're doing High Street first?
No, I think we're going back up to 26 now.
we're going back to case 26
26.
at 1100 Revere Beach Parkway, Federal Realty, OPLP. Sorry to,
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Anthony Rossi on behalf of the petitioner. I do also have a representative from Bowler who is in the audience, and I would ask that he can come forward, and also have the architect of record also on this. And John, you have everything still on the screen? Perfect. Brief synopsis. This is inside the mall area, the existing mall area. John, can you pull to the site plan, please? The yellow dotted area is where they're proposed, we call it restaurant, but we expect it, that we're negotiating, that's gonna be a Starbucks there with a drive-through. Everything is built within the, what's regulated in that area. We're not adding or getting parking relief. We actually have a dimensional regulation. John, can you pull to the slide to show what the parking and the landscaping? There we go. And if I'm just gonna take the mic up here, so it's easier for me to look at it. So essentially, this is the area that we're talking about. This is going to be a landscaped green area, so it's going to be identified, so where the cars come in and go around for the drive-through. They exit out this way, but there's another exit here if somebody wants to get out of queue for whatever reason, emergency, they don't have to sit and wait. That's just for emergency purposes. As far as parking requirements, as you can see, this is what's proposed and this is what's required. We actually have excess of parking than what's needed for the whole entire mall itself, including this. So nothing is taken or delineating from what the current use is for the mall. Any modification, especially of this size, would go to site plan again for that modification. And also, since we're putting a drive-through, that goes to ZBA anyways for a special permit. Any drive-through under this zoning requires special permit relief. And that's essentially the change on it. But as far as snow removal, stuff that's more concerning to the board, the developer who actually owns the mall site, they do all the snow removal for the whole parking lots anyways. So that won't change whatsoever with the tenant that's in place. They'll still be maintaining the grounds, lighting and so forth. We do have a landscaping plan that was submitted, and a lighting plan. And of course, that's subject to John anyways, to design review, and we would work with him on that. This is already a well-lit area, but it's going to be more lit for the drive-through and so forth, designated. But there's an enormous amount of parking for this small area because it goes by the amount of patrons and employees. So we have excess parking, plus we have an additional 70-plus parking spaces that are there that we don't need in excess. So nothing before this board other than the special permit for the drive-through. And everybody believes the drive-through is good, beneficial for the neighborhood because people don't want to get into the cars and go out. And the way this is set up is that there's two-way traffic here. It queues all the way around to get to this point here. So it's an ample amount of space to get in there and get out on it. So as far as pedestrian traffic, it's not an area that people are walking into the front of existing entries of buildings. It's positioned in a way on the site that doesn't interfere with any of that, and there's all curbing around this area and landscaping, and that's done purposely, so to delineate that issue on it. And if I can, I'll just have Bola talk briefly on drainage and stormwater if there's a concern on that, since it's site plan.
Good evening, Bill Lucas with Bowler Engineering. As Anthony has already described to you, I don't know if there's a larger view of this, John. As far as stormwater management on the site itself, we are decreasing the impervious coverage on the site, adding a lot of landscaping to that point, and there's already stormwater management for the entire shopping center. So what we've done is tried to, as best as possible, maintain proposed grades consistent with existing grades across the site. Higher point at this corner, lower point at the rear. There are existing catch basins out in this region of the shopping center, and we will continue to drain off in that manner to those catch basins. As far as other utilities on the site, we have water and sewer connections that extend from the rear of the building back to existing infrastructure on the shopping center, and we will make other connections with gas, telecom, and electric as needed to different locations around the site itself where existing infrastructure exists today.
Thank you. And I would add, just in case it's a concern, as far as trash removal, there is a dumpster located for this specific area that will be landscaped in, and that's private pickup for dumpster for trash removal. Architecturally, I believe you have an architectural rendering, right, Ron, John? So this is essentially how it's going to look. It's going to be similar to a Starbucks look with glass, signage, aluminum storefront, and to that. And the signage, as far as that's concerned, that gets submitted to John anyways for approval for signage, what's normal in the industry. And that's essentially the project. It's a very small portion of the site, but again, because it's a modification, it goes before the board, and more importantly, the special permit goes before the ZBA and the planning board for the drive-through. Thank you.
Is this a lease, or is that portion of
The mall owns the whole site, so everything, any tenant there will lease from the mall.
So you don't have a tenant?
Excuse me?
We don't have a tenant yet?
No, I mean, everybody knows, right now, it's gonna be Starbucks, that's what the drive-through
So
is.
my question is, how many cars go around the building, ballpark?
I think it can be almost, 20 queued? 16 to 18 queued.
And how long is the wait for the beverage?
How long is the wait? We don't really know, but I know that on a similar Starbucks that I've done for Dunkin' before, they're usually between 2 to 3 minutes a vehicle that they turn over for the drive-through. But on this site here, there is another Starbucks in the other mall area. So this is more something that people will probably they're not going to be going there purposely, let me get to the drive-through. It's more that people that are already in the mall area, getting Home Depot and so forth. And also another benefit too, most likely it will employ, just like other locations in Chelsea residents, because it's in Chelsea location.
Is there going to be bike racks?
Will there be bike racks there? I don't believe there is on the site, is there? None shown now. If that's something that the board wants to see, we certainly.
Is there going to be seating inside?
There'll be seating inside.
If there's seating inside, I think it would be good to have a bike rack.
Yep, we can show a bike rack on the plan.
We do what Taco Bell's doing, and eliminate the seating inside.
Sorry, Mimi, what did you say?
Taco Bell is eliminating seating inside, because drive-throughs are immensely popular at the moment. They're building one out west that is mind-boggling with robots and anyway.
No robots here.
It is-
Starbucks is a union company, I'm sure you know, so there'll be union employees.
And how long will it take to build?
That I don't know. I would expect, from the time of, they're still finalizing the lease, it's subject to approval, and construction, I would say probably 8 months to a year, correct? Sorry, can you just?
Hi, Sarah Rogers with Federal Realty. Right now, we would anticipate having base building construction complete by this time next year, and then the tenant would take approximately 6 months to fit out the interior. So we'd be looking at an opening approximately June 2025.
Thank you for speaking into the microphone so well. Can everyone please speak that closely in, because I missed a lot of the last bit of conversation. What were you saying about Starbucks being union?
No, I'm saying most of the employees from Starbucks are union, so it's not, she was talking about robots, it's not something for robots.
Oh, robots. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry, with Taco Bell.
I'm
essentially.
sorry, I was,
Sorry,
Can you walk us through the site lighting?
excuse me?
Can we go back to the site plan, John? I just want to understand the modifications to site lighting.
John, there may be a slide towards the end that shows site lighting. Is that in there, Sarah? Great, keep going. This one, perfect, thank you. So, existing conditions today, there's probably 4 very large light poles that are spaced kind of in a square throughout the shopping center itself. One of them happens to be almost at the corner of the building now, and we will be removing that in kind and then replacing it with what we're proposing to be 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 smaller light poles in the range of 20 to 25 feet high, and providing illumination of no less than a half-a-foot candle over the entire area.
And they're dark sky compliant?
Yes, they will be.
I have
It
another-
is 25 feet. It is 25 foot high, the lights.
I have another comment about the mall in general. I think that if you guys would like to bring this new store in, I'd like to see the owners, be a lot more on top of keeping the site clean, especially behind Home Depot. There's a bike path that goes from Creekside Commons and from the Mill Creek area all the way down to the projects on Lock Street. And when you ride your bike back there, there's just trash and trash from Home Depot. And so I think it's really important that, the mall enforces cleanup of that site.
I mean, we'll certainly talk to Home Depot about it and look into that. I'm not sure where the site ends behind the point, but I'll certainly talk to Home Depot. Thank you.
All right, I don't think,
Alan?
Alan.
One quick question, I guess. I've never seen like a drive-through this way where there's no parking in the inside. It's all on the outside. I guess, is there a reason why it's like that? Because if people were to park their car, it seems like they're gonna have to walk, like, across the cars. So it doesn't really make.
I think you're talking about where the queue is. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how it's designed that way. Go ahead.
There's a variety of ways to design the site from a
Yep.
traffic standpoint. This is the most efficient from a queuing standpoint for the drive-through itself, to not have cars parked in between the building and the drive-through, to try to separate both of those conditions where you're going to have potential traffic and pedestrian conflicts. So in this case, we've condensed that queuing action around the building itself, and then have provided sidewalks along 3 sides of the building, which is the dedicated parking for the building itself, including crosswalks that allow pedestrians to safely maneuver from their vehicles to the building.
And you said the queue could fit 12 cars?
Between 16 and 18, and that goes from the window
Yeah.
back counterclockwise to the 2-lane split, and prior to the crosswalk that you see at the entrance.
And then where your hand was right there, so that's parking for the store, which is not
Parking here,
down.
And
there,
here,
yeah.
yes. And again, there's crosswalks and sidewalks along that adjacent to the building itself and along the parking stalls.
I mean, like, I'm not a drive-through expert, but I've never seen a driveway, like a drive-through this way, and I feel like it more so encourages people to use the drive-through rather than park and
I've
walk
done
in.
about 30 McDonald's in my day in terms of drive-throughs, and typically the way that they lay out their McDonald's is to provide the drive-through as close to the building as possible, again, to reduce those pedestrian vehicular conflicts. And most of their designs, it's almost tighter to the building than this. This has a little more area for the outdoor seating to occur, and sometimes you'll see their parking right up against the building, and then it may cause that conflict where you have the stacking behind vehicles. In this case, you're not going to have that situation.
I can talk to you a little bit about if you ever go to the McDonald's going to the casino, which is one of the busiest ones. They built the 2 stories. If you go through it, you see that there's no parking against. It's all away from the building, so they can have the queues going up around, so it doesn't affect exactly what he said, that issue with cars parking and blocking the queue.
Yeah, I guess my concern is just everyone's gonna be incentivized to use the drive-through, and then there's gonna be overflow on Parkway Plaza, and then there's just gonna be traffic.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a traffic analysis on this, and especially with the trips, with the amount of the size, we even have an overage of parking, and that mall doesn't really get overly parked to begin with. If you go there, you'll always see parking in spots there. It's not a pretty busy mall, especially in today's world, with people going into the malls. Thank you.
All right, I can't see anything concerning with this project, so I'll put forward a motion to approve or to recommend approval with the standard conditions. Are there any other conditions, John?
I recommend that, in addition to the standard conditions, address the concerns raised by the DPW, provide me with a signage plan, a landscape maintenance plan, and location of bike.
Yep.
All of that.
I'll second that motion.
It's seconded, so should we take a vote?
Did you make a motion?
He made a motion, I seconded it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So that was for the recommendation. Now you have to do
By all
the
means.
site plan.
I will put forward a motion to approve the site plan.
With
I
the si-
second. Oh.
With the similar conditions?
With similar conditions as discussed.
I second.
Motion was made and seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board.
Right, to see you December 12th for the ZBA.
See you in the drive-by.
Yeah. Right, we're going to have an informational presentation by the petitioners at 91 Crest Ave, Italia.
John, should I recuse myself? Should I recuse myself? I'm going to recuse myself.
Just so the audience know, this is informational only because we don't have 6 members to vote on this, so this is informational only.
Sorry, my computer's thinking. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thanks for your time this evening. I know there were a number of questions and comments from the last planning board meeting, so even though we don't have a quorum to vote, we appreciate the time to kind of show some changes that we made in attempting to address some of those comments. Just a reminder, kind of our schedule. Right now, we're going to zoning and planning board approval, and the immediate goal after this is, with that approval, to get state financing for the affordable project. So the items that we'd like to kind of provide more information on today is related to exterior materials. I think there were some questions related to that. Provide a more kind of easily digestible trash diagram for how trash will kind of get out of the buildings. The sustainability features that we have planned for the various buildings. And then we made some tweaks to the site plan based on some concerns and comments that the planning board provided. And then do a little bit more deep dive into landscaped amenity spaces. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Greg from DeMille Schaefer.
Good evening. Just an overall, Greg Elgersweeney from DeMille Schaefer, the architecture firm. Just an overall site rendering axon to give you a reminder of the overall site plan, as well as a site section looking both north and south on Crest Avenue, showing the proposed new construction of the addition at Sargent, the connection between Laundry and Williams, as well as the new East Parcel building, and each of them reflecting their respective existing building's height. There was some discussion last time about the material on the connector building, and so we just wanted to touch on this again and share a sample of the proposed material, which is an FRP fiberglass reinforced panel with a wood veneer. And so there's a fiberglass core with a natural wood veneer on top of it. It's a very hardy material and resistant to, a lot of damage. It also is resistant to a lot of environmental conditions, sun exposure, environmental pollution, etc. So it's a very hardy material. And as you can see, it's of a wood nature, so just to alleviate any concerns that it may look like concrete, as was discussed last time.
What is the material you're proposing for the
so the gray material would likely be an insulated metal panel. And similar to the wood comes in various natural tones and textures, which we would look to refine. We would look for one that complements the brick buildings on either side so that they don't mimic the brick, but they complement each other well. And similarly with the metal panel, we would look for something that complements the other building's existing materials. So just to quickly review the waste movement throughout the buildings and the site, there was some concern as to how that would happen. And so the dashed blue line is representing how residents would move trash internally to a localized trash collection area, whether it be an internal trash room with a chute down to a main basement level collection area, and then the red line showing how maintenance staff would take it from that temporary holding location to the main waste collection point. And so there's 4 of those red dots you can see. One behind the townhouses, one next to the Veterans Art Museum, one behind the Veterans Resource Center, and then one outside of Kevel. And then there was questions about some sustainability features or initiatives, so we just wanted to highlight some of those. The entire campus, when completed, will be an all-electric system, so there won't be no fossil fuels. The new buildings, the connector building, East Parcel, and townhouses would be passive house design. And we will be upgrading the facades of all the existing buildings to improve their energy performance, as well as providing all new high-performing windows in all of the existing buildings to also improve their energy performance. We'll be providing rooftop PV systems on the new buildings and providing EV-capable parking stations for 20% of the off-street parking. Some of those, as you can note, are subject to the National Park Service and Mass Historic approvals. Any questions before I hand it over to landscape?
Good evening, I'm Michelle Crowley from Crowley Cottrell Landscape Architecture. Just starting off with an overall site plan that shows the neighboring property to show how much open space is also available to any residents in the community over at Malone Park, and connections from Crest Ave and even Hillside that can get you over to Malone Park. Moving into the site, one of the changes we've made since we last were here is we removed the bump outs on the Crest Ave, so we added some parking, and that was then easier for travel, especially in the wintertime. And so we've left just the raised crosswalks, and the trees in the street are associated with those crosswalks, so no more bump outs. I'm going to go through each of the spaces, starting up at the top and move clockwise, starting with the townhouses, then talking about the Cafe Plaza, the Victory Gardens and Greenhouse, Adams Courtyard, and then ending with the Sullivan Courtyard. So the townhouses, we have added spaces for terraces in the backs of the buildings. So you can see some images down below that represents small terraces where you could have grills, tables to set up outside. And we also have added a tot lot, a little playground for any of the children that are living in the townhouses. And if there's any elsewhere on the at the home, they could use this space in the back here, but this is mainly, it's in the back mainly for the residents of the townhouses. The Cafe Plaza, and we're saying cafe, it's more of an amenity space in the building, but the area outside is a space that's has tables and movable tables. You can, if there is a cafe, you can eat outside, or even if you want to just read outside. There's a planting area there, as well as it's lit at night. So if you want to have a small gathering, music, let's still to be decided on what if there's going to be a cafe or what could be used in that space. But we really feel like that's a great amenity space for the veterans' home. Further down Crest is what we're calling the Victory Gardens. This is actually a walled-in space, so a quiet interior space to allow if you want to sit and rest. There's more of a park side to it on the left, more garden, more like pocket park garden. On the right side are raised planter beds for community gardens. There's a greenhouse so that we can store materials there, use it in the wintertime. And then we also have an outside the greenhouse area is where there could be tables, more of a communal table. Anyone who's wanting to, do farm to table, anything from their gardens, you can do that in this space, as well as just have some resting time in a garden area. And this is off the street, it's walled in, and so it's private. Behind Adams, which is up high, the section down at the bottom shows how high this is from the street. So this right now is a space that there's like a single bench out there, and we really want to activate this space. It's got great views from up there, and so we would do Again, potentially a communal table, but just places to be outside, to meet with family members, to sit on the benches. You can see the view, and you can see that we're using double walls. Right now, there's a very tall wall. We would actually bring that down, so there would be room for some planting in there, so that it softens that edge behind the John Adams building. The last is then behind Sullivan. This is more of a passive, it's passive and active. The lower part is more of a passive green where there's some seat walls. You can walk your dog, and we have an area where there's potentially adult fitness equipment, so that can be more active. At the top, we have then a trellis with outdoor dining, potentially fire pit and resting area, lounge, an area for a lawn area that can have, you can play bocce, you can play croquet, and so that's more, it's really supposed to be flexible so that they can you can program this differently there. So going through, we just have images that show the outdoor fitness equipment, the sloped, the plant, we're thinking that there are multiple slopes here where it says the letter F would be planted slopes so that we could use native plants and wildflowers. So it's almost a pollinator, pollinator garden as well as, so for some wildlife as well as for people. Outdoor grilling, seat walls, so it can be a place of rest and a place of activity. And I think that is it. If you have any questions, I'll move it to Carmen.
I just advise that you don't do anything substantive, that you can have questions relative to layout, but no deliberations, no substantive questions, because this is not a public hearing, this is just an informational meeting.
So I also just wanted to clarify that for those who remember, this is a change from what we last showed, and the whole intent of the area closer to the street, kind of that triangle, is to invite the community to the hill. And it didn't seem like there was much excitement for a playground in this location, and that there's much more excitement for areas where people can walk and gather and kind of enjoy green space in its purity. So we decided that since this is meant to be kind of a place where we invite the community, that from what we've heard, that this might be the more appropriate kind of community benefit that we would provide. So that's the reason why we made this change.
I got a couple of them. One is the townhouses. You're building a playground, except there's only one 3-bedroom townhouse in there. So how many families do you think is going to be living in those townhouses? Don't you think it'd be more appropriate for a dog park to be up there than versus the playground? That's one. Second one is the coffee shop and memorial. There's still no water feature anywhere in this, or memorial to the vets, which I thought might be nice to have some kind of memorial for the vets. I got lots of ideas of what could you be doing there, but that's one of them. The garden space, are you going to have a shed so that people can store tools and things like that besides so there's a safe place for people to have, and I assume that there's power and water to the to the gardens. And I understand what you want to do with that park, but it still needs to be tweaked. I'm not thrilled with I get what you're trying to say. I understand it's a very difficult space, but it's still, I appreciate you got rid of the bump outs, but I still think there's stuff.
How do you typically manage the activation or the programming that happens in different public spaces in your properties? like, how would someone from the public know if they're allowed there and if they can, you know, use the space? Like, if you can just describe what the residents get to do versus what the public would be able to do.
So I would say that the Sullivan Courtyard, there's not going to be signage that would say this is residents only. There's not going to be any gates. There's not going to be any sort of deterrence from people utilizing, just like how currently seems like there are residents that utilize the green space that's at the triangular east parcel. It seems like that the community does come to the site and do engage with the veterans, which we love, and I think we would continue to have our service provider continue that tradition of the community being involved. I think the spaces that are private are either closed off from public access. So I think through thoughtful, design, that the whole goal is that the whole Sullivan Courtyard, with Misha's help, that it feels like it's inviting. I don't know if you have.
Just one of the things I didn't mention is right now there is a wall that goes all the way around Sullivan. We have taken actually that wall down in here so that it's, I mean, there's still some hills where there would be flowers and things on the slopes, but it is where the idea is that it's no longer a wall keeping people from the street. So I think it's important to note that difference. Yeah, so the memorial, I didn't bring that up, and so we will definitely add that, but we were thinking that would definitely go in the Victory Gardens. We have a retaining wall along the left side, so I think we can really easily use that for a memorial wall, as well as we can easily add a water feature into this space.
Can you just help me understand the topography there at the Victory Gardens? This is next to the coffee house, right?
Yes, and the section BB, the Commandant's house, is to the left. You can see that it drops, and so we have that retaining wall. This garden is sort of embedded into that slope, rather than just it's right now just sloping down, and so we're cutting in to create the space.
Okay, so this is after the peak of Crest Ave.
Yes.
It starts to
It starts to drop down, and so that wall there can definitely be used as a memorial wall. And whether we do a water feature can be one that's in the ground that is a sculptural piece. It could be one that might be part of the wall. We have a lot of opportunities there for water.
Okay. Well, I can imagine that members of the community would want to take advantage of some of these things if they're not being, programmed by the residents, like the Victory Gardens and maybe the coffee house or performance space. There's a huge need for that in this community. So,
I think one of our other goals in the Victory Garden, in talking with our service provider, is they've learned through experience that a lot of their veterans that live at their permanent housing sometimes pass away without family, and that they have incorporated a columbarium on their sites, and that is one of our goals here in the Victory Garden, also to allow places where the residents who live here for a long time can stay here if they don't have family that want to bring them elsewhere after they pass. Yeah, so for the townhouses, those are all 2 bedrooms. The only 3-bedroom is actually in the Commandant's because of the way the space is laid out. It worked out well for a 3-bedroom to be placed in the Commandant because we're keeping the configuration of the house. So the townhouses is all going to be 2 bedrooms and only 2 bedrooms, and there's 18 there.
With the changes to Crest Ave, is there going to be an increase in parking spots?
Yeah, there's going to be 8 additional parking spots.
Thank you.
comments or questions?
Right now.
At our previous meeting, there were some concerns from the community about the parking spots on Summit Ave, I think, about traffic flowing fast and it creating potential accidents. Were you able to address any of that feedback?
So our goal is to try to provide parking there. It's not part of our parking district, so it doesn't affect the parking count. And we tried studying whether moving that entrance to the other side of Warren Ave so that it's more protected makes sense and kind of, but right now, I think the only option, given the configuration of the streets, is to eliminate those parking spots, which is, if that's what the community think. I think one of the things also is hopefully with this driveway into the pack that we can create some more signaling to slow down traffic. But yeah, right now those parking spaces are tight, and the only, I think, solution would be potentially to not provide those spaces.
Can you clarify what
Yes.
the next steps are, because we won't be able to vote on it?
Sorry. I mean, we're not,
I just asked for some clarification as far as the next steps with how we, because we are short one member and we won't be able to
Yeah.
vote this evening.
well, the next step is recommendation for a major,
No, the next step is that they will come back on December 19th to continue the hearing, and then you can vote at that point.
Could we go back? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to tell John that we should try to ensure that 7 of us are here.
I try to do that every month.
Could we, it's Mimi, right? Do I have the, is it Mimi? Yeah, could we go back? I'm curious, I liked your idea about a dog park versus the playground. I'm curious what other people think, if it makes sense to do a dog park instead of a playground there.
It's just so far away from the.
Yeah, I mean, if people feel that's a better way to go, we could certainly do that. I'm just curious what other people, if that's a preference for the board.
Yeah, I mean, the last meeting, it seems like a lot of people use that for like a dog park area right now, so.
Okay.
I guess
behind
for
the townhouses?
No, I guess for the east parcel, and like that's being taken
Oh, we
away.
were talking about on the townhomes. I think there's a playground there now, and I think Mimi's comment was instead of making it a playground, make it a dog park.
I was saying like for the east parcel, like I guess people use that as a dog park right now, and that was the biggest feedback. So if you do provide some dog park area, I feel like
it would
that's
be
gonna
helpful. Okay.
kind of compensate
Okay.
some of the pushback that we got.
And then I liked your idea of a garden shed. We can add that. That's a good suggestion.
Well, one of my ideas is to put a big giant tree so that you could decorate the tree. So put a big, like, you could have it for Christmas, you could decorate it for V-Day, you could decorate it for 4th of July. You could see it from, and I understand this is way out of my purview.
We don't want to compete with the city hall.
Well, yeah, no, it's a way, because I think people would like to sit around the tree and meditate. I'm not.
Sure.
And especially in the park. So if you had a big, giant tree like Rockefeller Center, I'm talking Jagunda.
Not sequoia tree, right?
Yes, big tree. I'm talking about a big, yeah. And I just think it would be something little kids would like, and you could do some different, maypole, Easter, you could decorate it all in.
Okay.
I can think of a zillion holidays.
And then, sorry, you were saying something about the park, but I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what you were saying about the park.
I think well, this is something that we'll discuss later.
Yeah, thank you.
We need both. We need both. the
Votes, and we also need to get
dog
on with the
park
agenda.
And
This
the
is-
tot lot.
Oh, well, we were just looking for
I think-
feedback, so like, if we want to make
no,
more changes.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
John wants us, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think that the conversation of turning it into dog park or a playground is a topic that should come up at your community conversations. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't think any of us are gonna actually
Okay.
go to the dog park or the playground, but people in the
That was-
community probably are.
It came up at the last meeting and
Sure.
by one of the abutters, so.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Next.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you on the 19th.
Yes.
He doesn't want us to go into it. I think this one is too big.
Look underneath it, was like clipped to the stuff. No, no, it
No,
was
it's over
on
here.
the table when we arrived.
Maybe I missed it.
Oh, yeah, it's,
Next is case 2023-27 at 19 and 21 High Street. The petitioner is 19 High Street Development, LLC. Here they are.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Anthony Rossi, on behalf of the petitioner. I do have the architect sitting before me, Nicholas Landry. John, can you please pull up the actual site plan?
Which one did you want to start with, 19 or 21?
19, right, because there's two different applications, that's how we're doing it, right? John, could you do me a favor? Yes, okay, if you could, that'd be great. So it's 19-21 High Street. It's two different applications because it's two different lots. For purposes of clarity, this was a fire on this property. So one of them was a single family, the other one was a two-family. And as you can see, one of them has a dormer on it. So essentially what my client, who was not the previous owner when the fire took place, he acquired the property to redevelop it, is to 4 condos. And we're actually adding a unit. So we're trying to match both structures so they match each other aesthetically. So as far as setbacks, front yard, rear yard, everything was basically in the same shell footprint. And the major changes, and I could talk about 19 and 21, but if I go to 19, this is what was added to 19. These decks here on the side, because 21 has a rear deck, well, it has a structure in the rear of the property that was once a deck, and then they enclosed it. They're going to make it back into a deck. But to not create another violation on 19, because it doesn't have a rear deck, they put a side yard deck so each floor has outdoor space. Because again, these will be condos. And if you look at, John, can we go to the site plan for a second, please? As you can see, so just for purposes, we got 19.
I'm sorry.
We got 19 here and 21 here. So,
I'm just enlarging it.
sorry. John, I think the next page is colored. I'll take the cartoon too.
I'm sorry, what?
I think the next page is colored, I believe, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's better. Thank you, John. So this, on 21, just so everybody understands, it's easier to show the site plan. 21 has an existing dormer, like bump out. So the changes is on 19, we're asking to build the same matching existing dormer, so aesthetically look the same. On 21, this is where the structure ends. They're actually making this, they're shrinking the structure to here and making this into rear decks here. So they're taking the square footage off here, and this is already an existing two-family. On 19, this is all gonna be green space, and they put those 3 decks on the side that I showed you previously. On 19, you saw that domered roof that comes in like that. On 21, that doesn't exist, so they're building the same matching dormer. It's all gonna be brand new, hardy board, everything's gonna be all brand new windows. And now I wanna talk a little bit about the site. So, since it's 2 different lots, if it's under common ownership, you can have parking for one of the structures on another lot, so long it's within, I believe, 300 feet from the structure. In this case, it's abutting. So they have essentially 8 parking spaces here to get on this lot. And this is a dead-end street right here. So just so you know, it's not like somebody's coming down here, it ends. So eventually these 2 cars would back up into here or maneuver inside here to go back out. But there is 8 parking spaces for 4 units. No parking relief being requested. The site itself now doesn't show 8 parking spaces, it probably shows 2. But they're gonna do the site work and make that happen. As far as drainage is concerned, they have a potential spot here for a Coltech system here and a potential spot here for an additional Coltech for stormwater management. And the drainage would go right to the Coltech for each. So actually improving what's on the site and creating more impervious surface with more green space. And I identify this area here because this is where, if there's excess snow, it'll be pushed into this area in the wintertime. And if not, the rest of it will be removed if ever it affects parking. And of course, that condition can be on any approval if this is approved. As far as trash removal, so there's 4 barrels here, and they're enclosed in, and that's for 19 only. And then over here, it's enclosed here. This will have 4 barrels here, and that's for 21. And that's for their trash. Each building has its own trash identification area. And this is all green space all the way around, and green space here, and these are walkways here with pavers, as you can see, all coming in. So that's essentially what 19 and 21. Essentially, if you look at the dimensional regs, John, could you somehow shrink this a little bit so I... So most of the relief that's being sought is because it's an existing non-conforming structure. So it's already in violation of the front yard setback, rear yard setback, side yard setback, lot size, because when these were built, they were small lots, and that's how the house, we're not changing the footprint of these structures, they're staying the same. In fact, we're decreasing the one on 21 to have decks instead of going all the way back to the lot line. And what we're adding to this structure, 19 on the side yard, doesn't create a side yard violation, it's just those exterior decks. And the total square footage that's being, if you want to count, added between both properties, I think it's a total of less than 700 square feet on it. So we're not adding 2,000 square foot units, we're just making them match each other. And the biggest addition is to add the dormer to match one side and the frontal dormer, and it's for aesthetic pleasing. And again, these are going to be condos, they're not going to be rental units, and they're going to be built to be a nice condo unit in the neighborhood. And this was a burnt-out building. And John, could you if you can get to the colored renderings of the building? I believe it's the...
I'm sorry, what?
The colored renderings of the building that shows... I'm not sure if you have it. I think it's the first page, John. Or maybe not. We can work in this. So essentially, this is the profile. On 19, 3 decks here, all hardy board, black windows, and all this on this side. And this is the abutting land, so forth. And 21 is actually going to mirror 19. Nothing's really changing. It's just that because they're 2 different lots, we had to do the application this way, and they all become violations because these are all non-conforming structures and lots and so forth.
Can you go to the front elevation?
The elevations?
Yeah, it was 1 page on either side of that one.
I think I just saw it, John.
So, okay, so we're looking at the existing condition there.
Yep,
and
so
that's a peaked house. So are you telling me that one side is going up and the other is going to stay?
So this one side already has this dormer. The other side's going to match.
Is it recessed so that there's...
Well, right now, because of the fire, this won't look like that because the roof line is designed that way when they built the dormer years ago. My client didn't build that. When he builds a new one, it won't look like this. It'll be square. John, can you show what this? Okay, now, see, here it is. And the elevation height is, with the new roof, it'll be 33 feet in height. Am I missing the question?
It's just that architecture makes no sense at all.
Oh, well,
It's more of an
Nick,
aesthetic
you want to
thing.
talk about the architecture?
So the left side is existing and the right is
So
proposed.
when they built it, for whatever reason, one had a front dormer, one, like in the front, and the other one didn't. The second one had a dormer in the back and the other one didn't.
Okay.
I didn't design it that way, it was just built that way. I don't know, if am I
Well,
answering?
The existing condition looks far more appropriate than what's proposed.
Yeah,
Can you
existing
speak
con-
into the microphone?
So what is proposed for the left side? Will that match the right side, or are
So
they going to
exactly,
two
the
different
existing
animals?
condition of that will match, they all will match each other. That's what the whole, we're trying to do, is match what's existing. The only difference is one of them, that one side doesn't have a frontal bump out, and we're gonna match that too.
Okay, and that makes sense at the first two levels, but it doesn't make sense at the roof, when you have a slope on one side and a flat on the other half of the same house. But,
Yeah, I mean, I guess what she's asking is, are both houses gonna have that dormer?
Both houses will have the matching dormer, correct? Flat roof.
So both houses will look like the right side. The reason that the house on the left side has the angle right now is because we're showing the existing condition and not the finished condition there.
Because they're two separate permits, okay.
Sorry.
So they
yeah,
will
that's-
be.
Yeah, so that
okay.
is a little confusing, I'm sorry.
I
So
see, okay, I'm glad you pointed
it would be
that
the same look on both sides, flat roofs. to
Okay.
the back.
Correct, okay, I'm sorry, I thought,
So you're isolating one project at a time? Yes.
Because
Correct.
of the way it was, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
correct. Sorry, I
Do you
didn't,
understand what?
100%,
they're both gonna match this.
Okay.
Do you want me to show the
Okay,
21?
no more
Yes,
to
please.
belabor it.
This gives you a better idea.
Just trying to get to the similar plans.
That's how it's gonna look. The same,
That's the other side. They share a wall.
correct, correct. It's a potty wall,
They're mirror image of each other.
exactly, the exactly mirror
But
images.
you don't
It's-
have any picture, any images of what they.
What it looks like as one. I don't think we have one of those as part of the package, and I think that, I'm sorry, we were going back
Can
and
you
forth.
speak into the
about-
microphone, please?
Sorry, I don't think we don't have that as part of this package because of the fact that it was two sets and
Okay,
but that's
I-
something that we
I
can absolutely
understand.
provide.
You've alleviated my concern.
Okay,
Yes, sorry, I apologize. So yes, so basically, they will look exactly the same on both sides. The only disparity is the 21, which is this one, we're taking the distance in the back and making it a deck instead of having it going all the way. And on the ZBA meeting, in fact, one of the abutters who abuts that party wall was actually concerned because of the fire on it. And we've been talking to them because they're actually, so there won't be that distance touching their property. That's the only difference. We're actually shrinking the back of 21, and then we're adding decks on the right. Other than that, there will be mirror images of each other.
Just double checking, was it the fire that occurred in like early 2023? Or is it some other fire that I'm thinking about?
I'm sorry,
Sorry, I'll take this off. The fire that you're talking about, did it occur in early 2023? Or am I thinking
No.
of some other fire? Or is it older?
3 years ago.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. They've been actually working with these plans. I'd be lying to you if I tell you, it's been almost over a year because there was issues is, do you go in as a one project? Do you go into two separate projects? So after dealing with the commissioner and John, it was two different applications and two different petitions, so we had to change the drawings to accommodate two different applications and two different petitions. And that took time.
Are you planning on selling the property before or after construction?
No, my clients are developers, they build.
Okay.
So they build, Martha Construction, they do this all over Cambridge, Somerville, Everett, Chelsea, South Boston, East Boston. They build brand-new condos and they sell it. So they're not selling the permits. In today's world, the permits aren't really worth much anyways because of financing and construction. They will be building this themselves.
Okay. And when are you planning on starting construction?
If it was up to him, he would do it tomorrow. So pretty quickly.
Is it, when they're completed, is it going to be one association, or is it going to be two associations?
That's something we have to talk to Cheryl Legal, because I have to see, ideally, it's supposed to be, I think, two, but I think we might have to convey the parking while on the common ownership, to the other parcel as an easement in perpetuity to go with the land. So I just gotta talk to Cheryl, because when they do the condo docs, and Chelsea has a condo board, essentially, so we have to see how that has to be done because of the parking situation. So it'd be easier to do one association, I just don't know how that would work, as far as if a merger applies or doesn't apply and what have you. So, but that's something they would have to figure out. It's more of, do you do the conveyance with the parking and easement to run first, or you do that after, or is it part of one? Ideally, it's a lot cheaper and easier just to do one association and merge the deeds.
Okay, I'll say it. I'll vote for it. I'll give it I'll put an agenda on it and say we should vote yes for it with the usual
With standard conditions as applicable, address the concerns of the DPW and the fire. Should the two parcels be sold separately, shall be an easement to allow for the use of the shared parking, and no rental period of less than 12 months.
I'll second it.
Made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, everyone. If I don't see you, Merry Christmas.
December 12th.
Thank you.
Yeah, December 12th.
Yeah.
ZBA.
Yeah, I'll see you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I swear to God, I don't think he's here.
Right. And last in the petitions is case 2023-28 at 146, 150, 156 William Street, and et cetera.
Good evening, everyone. Roy Avellaneda, 325 Commandant's Way. And I'm here on behalf, actually, instead of Mike Vanu asked me to be here to speak on behalf of his application. And this is a previously approved project that is 20 units that was approved by both the Planning Board and the ZBA of 20 affordable and workforce development units in a currently or unutilized, rather, non-conforming gas station at the corner of Mulberry and William Street. The project before us, or the petition before you, is to change the composition or the ratios of the affordable units as part of an application with Mass Housing. The proposed change right now is asking that the ratio be 3 affordable units at 60 AMI, 9 units at 80% AMI, and 8 units at 100% AMI. Part of the reason this is all happening is the previously approved ratios made it basically financially unable to be done at those deep counts. So there is a change to increase to 100% AMI some of the units in order to make this still a affordable, deed restricted, and completed. As far as the rest of the project, to my best knowledge, that the plans that John has, none of the plans have changed. There's still 20 units, all one-bedrooms, same number of parking spots. The setbacks and such are all the same as the previous project. The only thing that changes is the ratio.
I'm sorry, could you go over that ratio again? I'm sorry.
Yes, I have the summary that was provided to me by Mike Vigneault on October 1 is 3 at 60 AMI, 9 at 80% AMI, and 8 at 100% AMI. That's 20 in total.
Is there like a comparison of what was approved and what's?
I don't have that in front of me. I think John has the previous approved. I don't think there were any 100% AMI. I believe it was a ratio of possibly 6 at 60 AMI and then 14 at 80% AMI.
I'd have to go back and look.
And nothing has changed except for the breakdown of
The breakdown. There's not one thing that's changed about the building or the size of rooms or the bedroom counts or anything. They all still remain all one bedrooms.
And they're condos or are they rentals?
No, it's all condos. That was one of the conditions that was, required by previous city manager Tom Ambrosino, that in order to gain support from the city in this R1 district, and it only gets allowed because you're going from one non-conforming use in an R1 district to another non-conforming use. But it still cleans up a brownfield site. Anyone that goes by there, they see construction vehicles, an underutilized parking lot, oil. I think an oil company, fuel company rents a couple of spots there. So it buttresses that whole area.
And do we have a timetable, different new timetable?
If all the funding comes through from the state and he hopes to break ground in the spring or actually summer to fall of this upcoming year. So we're probably looking at completion, lottery done, because again, it would have to go through, the city has to approve the whole application process, the lottery, as I did with the Reginald, and I'm doing right now in Revere. The city has to approve it, Mass Housing has to approve the lottery process. So you're looking at probably 3 months application period, underwriting, all of that. I will tell you from being on this side of the sales side, it is very difficult and a lot longer to do affordable sales and vetting. You need 500 applicants just to make sure you can get 20 that are able to actually complete the process.
Is there priority given to Chelsea residents?
In the past, there has been a priority and we usually work with the Department of Planning on how to set that up. They have, and again, Mass Housing has its requirements. Right. But the gist is we typically do, and there's 2 sort of lotteries. A lottery of just Chelsea residents, and then we go through all of that. Then we go through the lottery of the non-Chelsea residents. And like the Reginald, we never even got to the non-Chelsea pool because we got the 4 at the Reginald with just Chelsea residents. And there are, and happy to say, 4 Chelsea residents that got those units, and they were all living in subsidized housing, sort of, and now are homeowners.
I just feel like we're missing some pretty important information of like what was what was approved before, and the city supported it under those conditions, and I feel like we need a little more information about what's being proposed instead. It seems like the most important thing that's changing we don't have like a side-by-side comparison of
Let
it.
me see if I can pull up, maybe just through my old notes, city notes, not having to do anything with the project, but actually city council notes. Might find an old,
Is the city here to speak on this case today?
It was all affordable housing before. It's
Mhm.
just that, it was just, like Roy says, it's just the ratio changed. So it's not like he wasn't, he had, this is a project
it's
that,
the addition of moving up, we're basically adding the 100% AMI
Yeah.
level. We didn't have 100% AMI level. We kept it solely 80% AMI, 70% AMI, and I think the 60% AMI, which are the hardest ones. We bumped one up to, so basically going with a few more at 100% AMI. It's the next level. It's about $20,000 more in income per household, roughly, when you look at the stats.
Just confirming, there aren't any changes to construction plans or floor plans or anything else? This is just AMI changes?
It's just AMI, and quite frankly, it's the only way that it can get done, the finance part, that extra $20,000 that you're collecting on those other units, the 100% AMI, a higher selling point. And it doesn't make, and I've looked at the AMI numbers. It's, a household at that level needs to make a combination of $100,000 by the time we get there, because right now it's about the mid-90s. So two people combined can't make more than $100,000. That's still well below, I would say that what we would say with Chelsea levels, two people making $40,000 to $45,000, $50,000 is not a lot.
I think that cash and carry place is an absolute eyesore every time I drive into Chelsea and other people drive into Chelsea. It's creating plenty of affordable housing. I will put forward a motion to approve or to recommend approval of this project.
I actually, I hate to interrupt, I'm looking at the old summary of, and this was dated, I'm actually looking at trying to look at the date. The previous one was actually no 80% AMI. We had, according to this, 1, 2, 3 at 60% AMI, and the rest were all 100% AMI. We're actually going down and including the 80% AMI, and that's a requisite to get mass housing. In order to get the mass housing funding, we had to decrease some of the units from 100% AMI to go down to 80% AMI. So in essence, we're actually being more affordable by getting but that's a requirement in order to get state funding from the Commonwealth Builders Program.
So it wasn't like, oh, interest rates spiked, it's no longer financially viable. Instead, it's like, oh, the Massachusetts housing regulations changed, so we had to.
No, there's availability. There's a combination of a few things. The project as it was, with 100% AMI and a few 60% AMI, would not get off the ground. We had to get this funding from the Commonwealth Builders Program. And one of the conditions that they have is offer some at 80% AMI. So the funding.
Why wasn't it like that to begin with? I'm just a little.
This was under Baker, and then Maura Healey came in and made this program available.
Okay.
So this funding just became available.
I see.
So this is brand new money available to communities that didn't exist 6 months ago.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for the
So
explanation.
typically, mass housing's lottery would prioritize the community or members of the community that the project is being built in, right? The local zip code.
They do have guidelines of what segment they want to make sure it's people who, as long as you're
you're reaching out to people who are on SNAP benefits, and there's a laundry list of, benefits that they're looking for to make sure that you're advertising them, and they're the ones who are applying. I will have no doubt that those are the individuals that we have in Chelsea anyway, that are using those sort of programs, social programs offered by the state. I feel very confident, again, based on the last two projects that I've been associated with. Reginald, that was one that I oversaw the lottery. The previous project at 932, I know that there were 3 or 4 people that were Chelsea residents. So I think that I think having 18 available of 18 condo units, we certainly have a leftover applications from the last couple of ones.
I think with that explanation, I'm comfortable with it. I want to, uphold the previous approval that happened, the spirit of it. I don't think that this is going against the spirit of what was approved previously. That was my concern, basically. But with that explanation, yeah, I'm happy to. Is that motion still? No, you have.
I guess I saw the property was listed. I guess. I'm not sure when. It was listed for sale, I guess, starting in February.
Correct.
I guess, was it because the numbers weren't working?
The numbers were not working, at least not we were looking for someone who specialized in creating affordable housing and had the resources or the wherewithal to get through the grant process. In all honesty, Mike Renew had just recently been successful in tapping into that network and getting the funding that you might see someone more experienced like a TND or in such. Those players who have been in the field, they have teams that know where to go and where to apply for the grants. So up until recently, the developer didn't have the wherewithal, the access and knowledge of how to get those fundings, but he's been a little bit more successful, particularly with this more recent project in Revere, getting the Commonwealth Builder Program funding, and now hoping that this next fund will be happening too. So to your question, yes, it was for sale because this developer at the time did not have the ability to make those numbers work, but now with the infusion potentially of that grant money, it'll work.
Mrs. Zernier, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, but there are a lot of conditions.
Do you want me to read it?
So
yeah, I'm so slow.
basically,
John can go
what I
through
did
it.
was I took the conditions that were put on the previous approval and carried them over. The only change is the previous approval had a requirement for a community improvement trust fund payment. That section of the zoning has been
Eliminated.
Eliminated, I'm sorry. So I took that condition out.
And does it include that if they try to sell it, that the approval is only good for Michael?
It did not. You can add that.
You want to add that? Yeah. Okay, so I'll make a motion to,
Oh, sorry, am I good?
do I have to do 2 motions, one for the site plan?
Yeah.
Okay,
Make the mo-
so I'll make a motion to recommend the special permit to the ZBA with this, under the standard conditions as applicable, and under the condition that should you sell this before implementing the plan, you can't, the new owner will have to come before the board again. And should I read all of it, John?
Yeah,
I
it
can.
would be helpful.
Okay. Should the plan or proposal be modified or revised in any manner from that approved by the board, including but not limited to any change in the number of home ownership units, the petitioner shall request in writing at least 3 weeks prior to a regularly scheduled meeting of the board a determination as to whether such change, modification, or revision requires additional review and approval by ZBA. The request shall be accompanied by a plan or plans showing the proposed revisions and/or modifications and shall be submitted to the Department of Permitting and Land Use Planning, which will have the authority to approve with or without conditions such minor modifications such as change in materials, minor relocation of site amenities, change in plant species, and other minor modifications or corrections that do not substantively change the site or layout or use. The board reserves the right to attach additional conditions if necessary. Omissions and errors in the plan shall constitute a change or revision to the permit request. Also, prior to the issuing of a building permit, the petitioner shall provide evidence to the Department of Permitting and Land Use Planning that this entire decision has been recorded with the Registry of Deeds. The petitioner shall comply with all other applicable requirements mandated by the city departments if not covered specifically in the control documents, and shall further comply with local, state, and federal requirements, ordinances, and statutes in effect as of the date hereof. Prior to issuance of a building permit, the petitioner shall complete a design review process at the petitioner's expense with the Department of Permitting and Land Use Planning, and if needed, its consulting architect. Such completion shall be evidenced by a letter of approval from the Director of Permitting and Land Use Planning. The Zoning Board of Appeals, through the department, reserves the right to require an on-site material mock-up of building materials for its review and approval. This special permit shall lapse unless work is commenced hereunder 24 months following the filing of this document, plus such time required to pursue or await the determination of an appeal pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 17 of the City Clerk. The Zoning Board of Appeals may, in its discretion, grant an extension of this special permit for good cause. Any request for an extension shall be filed with the ZBA no less than 30 days prior to expiration of this special permit. This variance shall run with the land, and unless work is commenced hereunder shall lapse 12 months following the granting thereof, plus such time required to pursue or await the determination of an appeal pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 17. If the rights authorized by the variances are not exercised within said 12 months, the Board of Appeals may, in its discretion, grant an extension of the variances for a period not to exceed 6 months. Any request for extensions shall be filed with the Board of Appeals prior to expiration of the variances. The work described in the control documents requires the approval of a site plan pursuant to Section 34-215 of the zoning ordinance. Any conditions imposed in such site plan approval shall also be conditions of this special permit. In the event that said permits contain conditions conflicting with the conditions hereof, the ZBA reserves the right to amend the special permit after hearing so as to render it consistent. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the petitioner shall address the concerns raised by the Chelsea Department of Public Works and the Chelsea Fire Department. As there is a need for a full final set incorporating all revisions prior to the issuance of a building permit, the petitioner shall submit to the Department of Permitting and Land Use Planning 4 sets of a final stamped and signed plan and any reference or support material that may be changed by conditions on the plan, which includes all approved revisions through the date of final plan approval, including those identified in this list of conditions. The department will distribute those 4 sets to the Planning Board, the ZBA, the ISD, and the DPW. The approved development is subject to payment into the II account. This amount is determined by DPW. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the petitioner shall submit to the Department of Permitting, Land Use and Planning for its review and approval of the signage plan. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the petitioner shall submit to the department a lighting plan showing compliance with dark sky standards. There shall be no rental lease, or sublease prior for any unit less than 12 months. Prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, the petitioner shall submit to the Department of Permitting and Land Use Planning for its review and approval a copy of all lease, sublease, rental, and condo documents for review and inclusion of the appropriate provision. In conformance with the Chelsea zoning ordinances, the residents cannot participate in the parking sticker program, just like we always say. Prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, the petitioner shall submit to the Department of Permitting and Land Use Planning for its review and approval an as-built plan and a signed certification that the construction was in conformance with the approved plan. These conditions, this doesn't apply because the permit isn't going to go to the next person they sell it to. Prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, the petitioner shall submit to the Department of Permitting and Land Use Planning a signed and stamped as-built plan and a signed and stamped certification that the building and site have been completed in compliance with the approved plan. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Thanks for going through that, Sarah.
That was impressive.
But good read. Yes, moved and seconded with conditions as enumerated. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, everyone.
No, that was site
We
plan.
need the site plan, though.
You need to do site plan.
Site-
Roy,
Roy?
need to do site plan.
No, 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 we have to
We have to-
approve the site plan.
Another motion.
I make a motion to approve the site plan. Should I read these conditions, John?
Do you want me to summarize?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I know that was an option.
Any modifications to the plan, you have to request the board, whether it's a major or minor change. You have to submit to my department evidence of recording of the decision. You have to comply with other city departments' requirements. The major site plan approval will lapse in 24 months unless action is taken. All exterior lighting shall meet International Dark Sky Association standards. Plans for the parking lot shall be revised to include an audio-visual warning for pedestrians. Plans shall be revised to include for bicycle storage for residents of the site. Petitioners shall address the concerns of the Chelsea Fire Department, and the conditions shall apply to any successor in
No,
interest.
no, not that one. We're adding instead that this site permit cannot be transferred to
Yes.
a new owner.
But that is still put on there because once they transfer it, it is applicable to the new transferred
Okay.
owner.
Second?
Motion?
I'll second it again.
Second?
Motion was made by Sarah and seconded by Eric.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Now you all say.
Now you
Michael
can
has to show up here, or someone has to show up here on December 12th for the
He'll be
ZBA.
back.
Now we have Alex.
Are we doing 128 Grove Street, or is that next month?
That's next week.
MBTA.
That's next month.
Oh, okay.
The zoning amendments.
Zoning amendments.
Yep. Go for it.
No, they're going to make a presentation to you.
Oh, even better.
So there's 3 zoning amendments. The first one is the MBTA Communities Act. They will make a presentation on that. I will make a presentation on the other 2.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. My name is Alex Train. I serve as the Director of Housing and Community Development for the City of Chelsea. Thank you for the opportunity to present the proposed MBTA Community Zoning Amendment to the Board this evening. So I'm joined by our team at the City of Chelsea's Department of Housing and Community Development, Carl Allen, who's been instrumental in shepherding this forward, as well as Barrett Planning Group, owned by Judy Barrett, and her staff planner, Lauren Lind, who put a lot of time and effort into crafting the proposed amendment with us. So designated as a rapid transit community, the City of Chelsea is required to adopt new zoning by the end of the calendar year in order to conform with the MBTA Communities Law. So as you know, the purpose of this law is to unlock a range of housing development options across the Commonwealth, particularly family housing in proximity to public transportation. So tonight we'll have a brief refresher on the law before dovetailing into an overview of the proposed amendment. We'll exhibit some of the key points of the amendment as well as open it up to discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to Judy to begin the conversation.
So thank you very much. It's good to see you all again. And John, I want to thank you in particular for your help with getting some of this straightened out. Just real asset to work with as always. So if you're running the slides, right?
Yep.
Can you go to the next slide then? This is what we're going to talk about. We'll do a little bit of a review again of the law, condensed obviously from what we talked about before, but just in case there's anybody here who's not familiar with it, talk a little bit about what the main requirements are, and then kind of at a higher level go through what the main amendments are that achieve the Transit Community Overlay District, which is what we're calling the MBTA Communities District. And we'll take any questions that the board may have after that. If you could give me the next slide, John, that would be super. So just to understand why we're here, Chelsea applied for assistance through a mass housing partnership program through the Complete Neighborhoods Initiative. And we are one of the consultants that works under that program. I had worked in Chelsea a few years ago on the housing needs assessment, so it was just, to me, just heaven to be able to come back here and work. So we're just happy to be back here again. But there were sort of a first round set of communities, and Chelsea was one of the successful ones. MHP is actually now just recruiting new applications for another round of Complete Neighborhoods assistance. So in addition to our work on the zoning, we're also going to be assisting the city staff with, preparing an amendment to the urban renewal plan as well that is sort of coincidental to this. And we could talk about that some other time. But there are a couple of pieces to our scope. Next slide, please. So let me just tell you a little bit about this law and kind of what it says and what it doesn't say. So next slide, John. So it is a requirement that went into effect actually about 18 months ago, but the implementation's been rolling out. It is a new provision in the State Zoning Act, which is Chapter 40A. The Section 3A, so-called, is the MBTA communities provision. It requires MBTA communities, of which there are 177, and you are one, to adopt zoning that allows multifamily housing in an area of, quote, reasonable size on an as-of-right basis. So no special permit requirement to be able to build the housing. It intends to promote kind of this concept of complete neighborhoods, ideally located near transit. It's true that not every community that's affected by this law has transit service or transportation service directly in their community. Some communities are next to places that have it. So the swath of area that's covered by the law is fairly large, and it includes some communities that don't have direct transit but benefit by their proximity to MBTA public transportation service. And the communities are sort of broken down into sets of groups, in part or largely based on the type of service that's available to them. So the rapid transit communities, so-called, of which you are one, are under a deadline of by the end of this year to have the zoning in place. And I want to talk a little bit about more what comes after the adoption of the zoning, just so everybody's prepared. But that map up there with those different color codes is just an indicator of how communities were classified under the law. The largest group is the commuter rail and sort of adjacent community standards. So next slide, please. So there are guidelines that were issued by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. I will hereafter refer to them as HLC because it's a tongue twister to say the whole thing. HLC was authorized in the legislation to adopt guidelines to implement the law. And the reason for that is that the law itself establishes a fairly broad mandate. And somebody had to put the details in. So HLC was directed to create these guidelines, which they have done. And the guidelines essentially reinforce but amplify what the statute says. So it's a multifamily housing as of right, a minimum of 15 units an acre. In a district of reasonable size, what HLC established as a guideline for that, in most communities that's a 50-acre minimum, but it also gets adjusted based on the total area of the community. So for Chelsea, it's actually a smaller area. That, however, has some implications for how the density gets calculated, and I will get to that. So in addition to the district of reasonable size and the minimum of 15 units an acre, there's also what's called a zoned capacity target, which is you have to zone for at least this on a density basis, and your area has to be at least this, and if you add up all the units that could be built in that district based under the proposed zoning, you have to hit this number, which is called the zoned capacity number. The district has to be located within a half mile of public transportation if you have it, which you do. And then the law has sort of a penalty that I think a lot of communities are familiar with, which is that you sort of become categorically ineligible for a couple of state grant programs. The other thing it's important to know about this law, which is a direct fair housing issue that the Commonwealth, I think, has been taking increasingly seriously over the last several years, is that the multifamily provisions in your zoning can't have components that would discourage families. So you can't restrict bedrooms, and you can't require an age restriction, and all the things that have made it so difficult to build housing for families, mainly in the suburbs, far more than communities like Chelsea, but you just can't do those things. It's intended to have housing near transit available to anybody who wants to live there, and it makes, it's a housing choice that would make sense for them. Next slide, please. So there are things the law does not do, and it's important to understand this. It doesn't require communities to demonstrate that they comply through new construction of housing. So this is very much a law around having the regulatory framework to support housing development, but as for an actual mandate to show that something can be built, that's not where this goes. If there are infrastructure requirements needed to serve the new multifamily housing, it's not the responsibility of the municipality to provide that, although clearly the Commonwealth, having an interest in seeing the housing built, would probably consider applications from communities with housing being built in a 3A district to be highly competitive, if you will, for certain state grants that support infrastructure. It doesn't override any other state laws. It doesn't affect wetlands protection. It doesn't affect any other things that, from the state perspective, would require some kind of state approval. So it doesn't go there on Title V or those other kinds of laws, which we all think about in permitting. It also doesn't provide any sort of specific option for waivers. And I think as we're getting close to that December 31st deadline, people have been asking that question, but there isn't any specific provision in the law for waivers. It was up to HLC to establish guidelines, and that's what they did. It does require compliance. As I said, there are certain state grant programs that just categorically go away. But I just want to make clear, this is really about having a regulatory framework and not a production of units requirement. Next slide, please, John. So you are rapid transit, as I said, and because your housing unit count as of Census 2020 was 14,500 units, you have a minimum unit capacity, the so-called that zoned capacity number, of 3,639 units. So that's what the district has to be zoned to enable. The minimum district size is not 50 acres here, it's 14, and that's because your city area is really small. So if you just think about, well, if I only had to have 14 acres, but I have to get to that zoned capacity number, that actually would end up being a density considerably greater than 15 units an acre. So the way one resolves all of this is through a model that was developed by consultants to HLC that's based in geographic information system technology, where a city or a community would identify areas that they thought were appropriate for this kind of zoning. Those parcels get fed into a model, and the model will essentially tell you, based on a series of assumptions, how many housing units would this produce? And will this actually check the boxes that are absolutely required under the guidelines? The density, the zoned capacity, and parameters around coverage and so forth. If you adjust those, can you get to those two really critical numbers, the density and the zoned capacity? And so we had to do quite a bit of work on this to get this to work in Chelsea. And so as a result, your proposed density is more than 15 units an acre, and we'll get to that in a minute. 75% of the district has to be within the station area, and that's just based on how much developable land is within a half-mile area. So there are ratios that have to be met, and this is where you fall. And as I said, the district is supposed to be in place by December 31st. The reality is that what HLC wants is your application for compliance in hand by December 31st. So we'll be working with the staff to kind of help pull that together, assuming this all passes, so that HLC has it. And as long as they have that application by December 31st, you are deemed to be in compliance until such time as they tell you that you're not. So we believe the proposed district meets all the requirements that HLC has laid out. And if we go to the next slide, or the slide after this, actually, we'll start to get to this. So just to orient everybody where the district is, the map that's on my left, your right, no, your left, is the city map and the sort of a locus map of where the district is. And the map next to it is sort of a zoom in of what the district is. And we've included on that kind of the floodplain, just so people can see, because that's kind of one of the things we had to take into account in modeling this area. Next slide. So the amendment that you have before you, it consists of basically 4 provisions. The first of which is to amend the section of your ordinance where you list the districts that you have in your community. And we're adding to that, actually 3, but the one I'm focusing on is the Transit Community Overlay District. The second amendment adds a new section which provides for that and what the rules for the district will be. The third amendment is to amend the zoning map to reflect the inclusion of this district. And then an amendment to the design review procedures to include this district. So implementing this essentially requires those 4 amendments. Sure.
So just relative to Amendment 1 for the Central Ave Smart Growth District as well as the Mixed-Use Overlay District. So no changes to those districts are proposed whatsoever as part of this amendment. We're simply administratively amending the zoning code and adding those districts which were previously adopted by the Planning Board and City Council.
I kind of figured that was the case, but I knew I didn't have to field that one. So anyway, if you can go to the next slide, John, that would be great. So what's the purpose of the district? You know, it's essentially to comply with the law. It's to promote diversity of housing opportunities. It's all the things that one would hope to say about why one is encouraging housing development where you are. It's encouraging redevelopment of underutilized parcels, providing, you know, mechanisms for affordability, parking ratios that are appropriate, and so forth. So the district has a purpose statement, and that's really important, especially if there were any special permits needed. One would want to be able to go back to the purpose statement of the district and say, well, this is substantially consistent with what we said. Next slide, please. So this is a table that essentially lays out the sort of dimensional requirements, and I'm going to focus on the TCOD column over here. So the minimum lot size, this is after a number of iterations in the model. We tried to stay as close as we could to whatever zoning parameters made sense from your existing zoning. So the minimum lot or minimum lot area per unit is 5,000 square feet. Excuse me, minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet, and the minimum land area per unit is 950 square feet. There's a minimum and maximum density. This table has one small error in it. There's a minimum density of 15 units an acre, which is consistent with the statute, and a maximum density of 40. This is getting to the heart of the issue we had of there's an area, there's a zoned capacity number, and we have to make it all work. And if we just zoned this area at 15 units, we would not hit the zoned capacity number. So we had to work with this in the model to get it to meet everything. So the maximum density is 40 units an acre. And in our opinion, based on what the model produced, that will get you to your zoned capacity number within the area that the city staff and we had worked on to call this district. The maximum lot coverage would be 50%, but one could go up to 75% with a special permit. So it's not that you can't have any special permits in this district, but you can't have something require a special permit that affects ultimate compliance with MBTA communities. If you want to go beyond, then you can have a special permit. And there are setback requirements, as one would expect in a district, 10 feet for the front and 20 for rear. There's a no floor area ratio requirement in particular for this district. The maximum building height is 4 stories. I see your hand up, and I'll get to you in just one sec. There's a maximum building height of 7 stories, a minimum of 4, and then an open space ratio of 15% per unit. And when we modeled all of this together, we were able to say, to the best of our ability, this meets the MBTA community's requirements in total based on HLC's guidelines. did you want to ask me a question while I'm in the middle of this? Because it's fine. Go right ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just figured it's the perfect time for this
Sure.
question. Are there any requirements for parking spots per unit? Because I don't see that here.
There is, and that is in here, and I will find it. One space per unit, and one vehicle space and one bicycle space per unit.
Awesome.
Can you
And
comment?
if it's more than 15 bicycle spaces, they have to be within the building, et cetera. Yes.
I'm trying to understand the proportion of open space. Is that, so the new metric is a percentage of the lot, the old was
It's a percentage of the lot.
Square feet per unit. Is it more dense or less dense? I mean, is there more open space or less open space than what we currently have? Does that make sense?
Carl? Yeah.
Can you speak into the microphone?
It's very close to the R2 apartment and R3 units per square foot. So if you take the 15% and multiply it by 950 per unit, you come up with 142 and a half square feet per unit.
Okay, so that tells me there's slightly less
Very
required
slightly
open
less.
space per unit.
Yep.
Thank you, Carl. So those are the basic dimensional parameters that we landed at. We actually had started with a little bit less area than this and expanded it to make the zoned capacity number work. Next slide, John. Did you want to say anything before we go on?
No, not on the dimensional side.
Okay. Next slide. So the use regulations are kind of what they need to be. It's multifamily dwellings as of right. We also included in this district daycare facilities and ground floor retail. Those are allowed, not required. There's a limitation on mixed use. You actually can't require it in the MBTA Communities District. There is a way for some communities to be able to do that if they have existing mixed-use areas where the density of the housing essentially equals this. But that was not the case here. So we just decided not to overcomplicate this and say it's allowed but not required. Another thing that made this a little bit tricky is that you have one of the most aggressive and, from my point of view, appreciated inclusionary zoning provisions in the state. It's one of the reasons that's kind of a joy to work here. Unfortunately, it doesn't model out in the requirements that HLC imposed on the inclusion of affordable housing. And I think it's important to understand that this law is not an affordable housing law in the sense of it doesn't require it. And so there was quite a bit of conversation about that early on, about at a policy level, what was the state going to require? And in the end, the policy was, if you keep it at 10% or less, that's fine. We'll just accept that. If you want to go over 10% affordable units, then you have to prove to us that it won't be an impediment. And you have to do that through what's called an economic feasibility analysis. So we had a multifamily finance expert on our team who did an analysis based on HLC's protocol and requirements, and it didn't work. So what we decided to do, rather than get into a bigger debate about this with the state, given the deadline to get this in place, was to just stay with the 10% in this district and essentially fight it out later if that's what the city wants to do, but to at least get the zoning in place.
Wait, so the state is trying to prevent municipalities from having too much affordable housing?
Do you want to respond?
I would love to answer this.
Yeah, probably interesting.
No, I think the state sees that robust affordable housing requirements in MBTA community zoning could be impediments to
housing construction in certain markets. So particularly because we were doing this in like a down market, interest rates are high, construction costs are rising, and the real estate market is inching along. A lot of different types of development aren't viable right now. So I think they were looking at how do you streamline all types of housing development first and foremost. In parallel with this, the city has been advocating for different policies at the state level around affordable housing and MBTA communities. I think what we're proposing here is a bit different than what other communities have proposed. So we have the proposed density, and then we are proposing additional density that could be obtained if you increase affordability. That is something that other communities haven't tried. We've gauged that the state may be accepting of it, so that is part of what we're pitching here.
So the state's concern is that if you put affordability requirements in your zone, then no developer will want to come and build because it won't be profitable enough for them, and they want lots of building to happen.
That's
a fair way to put it.
Is make it easy for developers to build more supply, which would hopefully lower
The
rent
law,
prices.
the law is favoring supply.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this? Because the next slide is just questions. So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Hello, I'm Lauren. Just a point of clarification for your understanding. This was advertised and listed on the agenda as 30 units per acre by right. It's actually 40 units per acre by right. So if and when you choose to make a recommendation, I would just advise that you modify that. Thank you.
I knew you would remember this. Thank you.
You took my question.
You would remember it, John.
No, I couldn't remember which number was, 30 or 40 or 35 or 40.
Can you go back to one of your earlier slides? It was around slide 10, and it showed the map, like the flood zone, basically. Yeah. So is this a newly drafted FEMA map? Like, would it,
No,
I guess what's informing that?
That FEMA map is the 2016 FEMA map that was approved.
2016? Okay, it looks more drastic than the last one I looked at. Okay, so is that likely to be updated, and will that impact the buildable land that we have to work with?
Yep, that's a great question. So a portion of this floodplain over the medium term will be reduced through the Island and River project, which is undergoing design presently. So that project seeks to institute a shoreline flood protection system to reduce coastal flooding in the district. Simultaneously, the city, through our department and DPW, are looking at stormwater improvements. Development in this district, though, will have to employ relatively robust climate-resilient design standards, and I know John has been one to spearhead those with developers. Our department has also been raising those as a priority for flood protection, as well as heat mitigation, healthy living environments, and sustainability. So we do envision that the floodplain will be reduced in size, over the next 10 years once that project is built, but it won't disappear altogether. And because of climate change, flooding in Chelsea will unquestionably worsen.
Out of curiosity, what is the purpose of including the floodplain on this slide? Is it just an FYI, or are there any impacts?
We had to consider it in the model.
Okay, that's part of the model. Can you quickly go up to slide 13, showing all the zoning ordinances?
The table with the requirements?
Yeah. So just double checking, if a petitioner came to us, or if a person wanted to construct a property that is, say, only three floors, that petitioner would require a special permit for that project?
No, we would require a variance.
Yeah, because there's no provision to go below 4.
Okay.
Do you have another question? Because there's something I want to add before my aging brain forgets. You are one of the communities that's trying to get this done by the end of the year. There are a couple others that have done it. There are others that are in meetings just like this in December. There are also some non-rapid transit communities that adopted zoning bylaws, not ordinances, that have a two-track approval process. They have to get approval from HLC that the zoning meets their guidelines, and they also have to satisfy the Attorney General, because in towns, bylaws have to be reviewed by the Attorney General. So be grateful you're not in that group, and wondering if you're going to get a different read from two different authorities. The fact is that right now, HLC, as of tonight, has not approved, to our knowledge, any of the few districts that have been passed. We don't know yet whether other expectations or refined expectations or clarifications of existing expectations may occur in the review process. I'd love to come to you and say, they've approved 5 or 6 of these and we know exactly how this is going to go in the review process. We do not know. And I want to just be honest with you, because if they come back to Chelsea and say, well, we think you should have added this definition in your definitions, despite the fact that I looked at them and I think you're fine. We may be back in front of you in a couple of months, and I just want everybody to understand that. If this zoning is passed, and if you're recommending it and the council adopts it, and we all collectively get that application done by the end of December, Chelsea will be deemed to be in compliance for the time being. If anything comes out of that review process that they want changed, then we have an obligation to help you do that. I'm hoping that does not happen. But I'm feeling really like I need to just say to communities right now, because nothing's been approved yet, we don't know what's going to come out at the other end. So as we know more, we'll keep staff informed. Yes?
Yeah, I guess, has there been any feedback for the ones that have passed?
We have not been told any. Well, there was feedback from the Attorney General for a bylaw that was passed in a town on the South Shore, and that bylaw hasn't been approved by HLC yet. But the Attorney General's office already acted on it, and that's all I'm going to say. They approved it, but with a number of concerns. It's going to be a tough year ahead. But, yes, go ahead.
I was wondering if maybe Alex can kind of speak to the overall vision in a more kind of abstract way. Like, so this overlay district is going into where like Market Basket and like produce centers and stuff and like jobs are. And in theory, it would be incentivizing, replacing jobs with housing, incentivizing it. Doesn't mean that it would actually happen. And I'm also curious to hear, like, are there other ways it could have been done, I assume, and why this way? And like, also, is Chelsea going above and beyond what's required? And if so, why? Or like I just kind of want to hear from that side of
Sure.
things.
John, would you mind going back to the slide with the map on it, please? And just to answer your last question first, we are meeting our kind of bare minimum requirement under the law with this zoning ordinance.
Okay.
We are trying a couple of creative things like the affordability provision, but we're not aiming for something higher than what's set out in the MBTA communities law. So there were a couple of reasons we honed in on this particular district as opposed to districts situated by other Silver Line stations. You know, I think first and foremost, this district envelops the largest tracts of undeveloped or underutilized land in the city, focusing in on districts such as, the neighborhood of Shirtlift Bellingham could have had relatively detrimental impacts on the urban fabric of the neighborhood and fueled displacement. I think secondly, we do envision that there is a balance of, affordable and mixed income housing and commercial and retail development in this district. As part of crafting the zoning district, one of the reasons this was an iterative process that was as time consuming as it was was because we steered away from many of the larger industry clusters and job anchors. So the district right now encompasses, underutilized properties like the scrapyard and Peter Pan facility north of Market Basket, the Market Basket site, some warehouses that are partially operational, but it does avoid, the produce center and many of those larger functional job anchors. From a planning perspective, we do envision that this is an area that has a robust mix of, affordable housing for families and individuals, neighborhood amenities like childcare and retail services, and most importantly, open space and public realm improvements, which have been sorely lacking. You've seen over, 3,000 housing units go up in the city of Everett and Chelsea over the last decade. And there's been, minimal investment in public open space and green space for residents. So that's important to us. As part of the process with the MHP Complete Neighborhoods program, we will be doing a lot of neighborhood planning work after the zoning is enacted. So this includes embarking on a modification of our urban renewal plan, which will unlock tools for the city to both acquire sites that are of strategic importance, finance development aligned with community goals, and ultimately invest in public infrastructure. And then secondly, we're in discussions with property owners like the owners of Market Basket and many of the larger sites around the future of their property, and most importantly, eliciting agreements that they undertake a community process to really shape the future trajectory of their parcels. So I think that's a long way of saying we don't have a fully intact vision just yet. We do have kind of overarching goals of creating housing near transit, along with retail and neighborhood services and public open space. How that shakes out on each specific site we'll be studying over the coming year with funding through EOHLC by performing feasibility analysis, conceptual designs, and community planning work with existing property owners and residents of the community. So this is really representative of the first step tonight, is enacting zoning. We know it's imperfect. We're looking to do it to satisfy our obligation, and inevitably we'll be back before City Council and Planning Board over the next 1 to 2 years to modify this, since this will be an iterative process.
That's really helpful, thanks.
And
So if I can just make sure I'm understanding, the reason, you could have put this zone over existing dense neighborhoods like Shirtlift, Bellingham, or whatever, and it would have maybe been less of a change than what this is, but that would have given developers the ability to put in housing by right and demolish existing multifamily housing and put up basically market rate housing and potentially cause displacement in those neighborhoods. So this, by putting it here in the Market Basket area, you're potentially, this is the way that you're kind of trying to comply with the law while preventing displacement. Okay, yeah, thank you.
But there was also the requirement that it had to be within proximate to the commuter rail station.
Yeah.
So,
But the Blossom, Addison neighborhood is also close to the commuter rail, and that's pretty dense and stuff too. So there's multiple ways it could have been done.
Okay, so if the overall vision is to incentivize people to be able to live without cars, is there any planning in the works for a ferry as part of the MBTA system? Is that part of the greater vision for Chelsea? Are we doing as much as we can to advocate for that?
So, presently we are embarking on a number of state level and local transportation initiatives that are underpinned by this district. These initiatives include reimagining the Spruce Street corridor as an artery that can accommodate bikes, pedestrians, trucking, vehicular traffic, and connect this future neighborhood that'll crop up because of zoning changes and community planning. Secondly, we're actively collaborating with the MBTA and local community organizations concerning the deployment of new high-frequency bus routes in Chelsea, including a bus route that'll connect Bellingham Square to Assembly Row, as well as a new high-frequency route between Malden Center, Chelsea, and the airport. As part of this, we're also looking at kind of longer-term capital projects, including the extension of the Silver Line, waterborne transportation, And eventually, in the long term, 10-plus year time frame, adding rapid transit service on the commuter rail line once it's fully electrified through Chelsea. So all of those are extremely important if we want to get people out of cars. But most importantly, I think it's important if we want to lower commuting costs for folks, particularly folks that can't necessarily afford to drive to work every day. So all that is underway. There aren't really concrete funded projects related to water transportation. On the Silver Line, the state should be hopefully making an announcement over the next 6 months relative to the extension into Everett and Somerville. And on other larger state level transportation initiatives, we do commend the Healy administration for thinking strategically with us on how they can benefit Chelsea.
Thank you.
Back to a pretty specific question. Are there going to be any impacts on industrial construction, or is this solely residential?
So Carl might have a different perspective on this. I don't imagine this is going to, this certainly won't rapidly accelerate industrial development in this area. This may unlock new kind of mixed use and commercial development opportunities. So some of the aging office space, for instance, that's on Everett Ave could be repurposed into either housing or commercial uses. We're not ruling out, as part of this amendment, any existing allowable uses in the district, like offices and other retail uses. But we are actively and aggressively pursuing industrial development opportunities along the waterfront, the New England Produce Center corridor, and a couple of other areas of the city.
So I guess first I would point out that
Can you
we
speak
stopped.
all the way into the microphone? Sorry.
Sorry. First, I would point out that we stopped the district at 2nd Street, and so everything below 2nd remains industrial. The second point I would make is this is an overlay district and not a base district, and most of what it's overlaying is either shopping center, industrial, or business. And all of those uses are still allowed exactly as they are today. So none of that changes. And the reality is land in Chelsea is worth a lot of money at the moment. And the markets are going to decide what the most productive use for any given parcel is. We're just adding housing as a more viable option.
Excellent. Thank you.
I have just one more question. Relative to other communities, how on time were we with putting this together?
Oh, about like many others. I mean, Brookline, you probably know, just adopted theirs 2 weeks ago. There was like wide speculation that they wouldn't, and it worked out. I actually don't know the schedules in some of the other rapid transit communities, but I haven't heard a big problem, and I haven't heard of any that have been approved. So I don't want to dodge your question, but I think this deadline is tough. This December 31st deadline has been hard for everybody. Even those with a council where you just have more flexibility around how you schedule this. In towns, you've got town meeting, it's a totally different system. But I haven't heard about anybody not planning to get there by December 31st in the rapid transit group, other than Milton.
And the difficult aspect of this was that the state issued regulations earlier this year, but they were silent on a couple of key issues that they didn't clarify until end of the summer, early fall. So it kind of set off a scramble from a lot of communities' perspectives. One of those was that originally residential uses were mandated on the first floor of properties, and retail uses like bodegas, dry cleaners, and hair salons couldn't be allowed. So that was one of the many issues that we were trying to change through the course of that time. But I suspect that a good portion of Communities with city councils will be absolutely fine. The communities that have town meeting, whether it's open town meeting or representative town meeting, are potentially going to miss the deadlines.
Just to give you a sense of how hard it's been for this set of communities, the change that was made a couple of months ago, allowing kind of a trade-off for some limited mixed-use development, the computer model to prove that your zoning would meet that requirement just came out within the last 2 weeks. And so the communities have been waiting for things from the state, and I think the state's been trying to roll them out as fast as they could. But when they set deadlines for all of the communities, they also basically set deadlines for themselves that I think were very aggressive. So it's the best answer I can give you.
No, that's helpful, thank you.
So one other point on that is this was a very frustrating process.
Be nice.
So the way the regulations were written, it was counter to good urban design. It was housing at all costs, forget about what the urban fabric looked like. And so we struggled because that's not the kind of community we want to promote, certainly not through our zoning. And where we ended up was in this overlay district, have a base zoning which is the minimum we need to comply, and then we added bonuses for people to implement the kinds of urban fabric that we want to see.
I guess, do you have a list of those bonuses that you mentioned?
Oh, it's in the ordinance if you read it, but basically there was a bonus for implementing our inclusionary zoning as it exists in the base ordinance instead of the 10% at 80% AMI. There are bonuses for ground floor retail and activating the public street, and those are the kinds of things we were looking for.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Questions? Any more?
So what we're looking for is a motion to recommend that the council approve it with the revision that the maximum density be set at 40 units an acre.
I will make such a motion.
I'll second it.
Made and seconded to recommend. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
It's great to see you again. I hope I don't have to come back and ask for any changes to this later.
Thank you.
No, we have,
You have two more amendments and public hearings.
a lecture on.
So what's the next one?
Yeah, they wrote out what exactly.
There's two more zoning amendments.
How they want the zoning code to be modified. And they proposed that to
Okay,
us. And we're
so you have two more zoning amendments. The second one is for relative to the hours of operation for marijuana facilities. Right now, in the section 34-158C2 establishes a requirement that marijuana facilities cannot operate between hours 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. The proposal is to eliminate that requirement and to allow them to operate as other commercial entities do, or as set by the licensing commission.
Are we proposing to put any restriction on the available time, or is the proposal to let each proprietor decide their own hours?
No, it's proposed that the licensing commission do, although the zoning board does have a right to put a condition of hours of operation on any special permit or variance, and you have in the past, in addition to this requirement be here, a number of the marijuana facilities and special permits that you proposed have the requirement that they cannot operate, they can only operate between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m.
And what's the reason for this, doing that?
Because the licensing commission feels that it's a licensing commission issue more than it is a planning board issue.
I think that's reasonable.
But again, it does not stop you from putting that as a condition.
So, John, we've given 6 licenses, correct?
I'm sorry?
How many marijuana facilities do we have, and how many may it grow to?
Well, the zoning board, the planning and zoning board have approved 6, and there are currently 2, 3, 4, 5, well, 4 in operation, 1 about to open up, and another one looking for a facility.
Okay, and so they're all still pursuing this because the industry is not thriving as much as they had anticipated, so I guess.
And the market for marijuana facilities has changed considerably. As you probably all read in the paper that a number of the facilities, especially in the western part of the state, have closed because it's just competition is, that's what competition does.
Well, so if extending the hours, we don't want to see failed businesses. So my argument would be, I would be in favor of extending the hours within a reasonable time frame.
I don't think it's about extending hours, it's about changing the way we regulate.
Right, exactly.
This isn't changing the hours.
So is it the
Gets to
licensing board determines it, or
Right.
or is it written into zoning?
Right. The licensing board could put restrictions on it, but then so can you as part of a condition of a permit.
Okay.
So you're basically not extending hours, you're just regulating it in a different way.
Okay. Does anyone have a strong opinion on this?
I think it's a good thing to change it the way it's proposed.
I mean, this is a public hearing, so you can request.
You wanna speak? Thank you for waiting.
That's okay. Thank you very much for your time, and good evening. My name is Richard Sue. I'm one of the co-founders and operators of Harbor House Collective on 80 Eastern Avenue. I am here to show my support for this notion to allow us to have extended hours of operation. It's certainly, as John said, it's a different climate out there. It's definitely a competitive climate, and it's very unusual for our fledgling industry to see this level of scaling and growth. Given that the city has approved up to 6 licensees, I believe that was in line with liquor licensing. And so I believe liquor stores are now currently allowed to open till 11 p.m. And so I think we are seeking to do the same.
Just out of curiosity, how does the city of Boston structure this?
I don't know.
Okay.
As far as I know, there are a few facilities throughout the state that have been open till midnight in some cases. There's a few municipalities that do that, but it's starting to be kind of like a topic of interest for a lot of other places. There were a lot of restrictive hours typically put on this industry to start, but I guess as we've seen, kind of destigmatization and kind of a normalization of this industry. It's kind of just, we've seen that it's not as much of a nuisance as people thought it would be.
Yeah, and I think if Chelsea gets to it first compared to other places like Everett or Revere, it'll draw clients into Chelsea, improve Chelsea businesses, so I'm for it. All right, I will put forward a motion. Are we approving it, or are we?
You're recommending to the council that they approve as proposed.
Yep. I recommend that the planning board recommend approval to city council
Second.
for this proposal.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, and Sarah seconded it?
John, is there an outstanding case for 128 Grove Street?
That's for next month.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got confused with all these papers here.
Okay, next one is. Okay, the next one is for indoor commercial recreation. There's nobody here to speak on it. So the city has received this is brought forward from the owner of the site at where the former paintball facility was located. He's having difficulty finding a tenant, and he has had some tenants come in, and particularly tenants such as bouncing facilities, which I think there's one in Everett, there's one in Danvers, and those type of facilities, as well as the facilities that are presented the NASA exhibit and are now presenting another exhibit up there. Those were allowed on temporary permits. They're not allowed use there. He's asking for a amendment to allow those uses subject to special permit. Well, at least he's asking for it to allow the uses. We're recommending to allow it by special permit. In order to do so, you need to change the definition of indoor commercial recreation to allow those types of uses. And that's what this does. At the same time, we're looking to add a definition of health and fitness club in order to allow for that use to be allowed there as well. And in order to do that, you'll also have to change the definition of theaters, the table of uses that allows the type of exhibition use there to include that definition in the table, and that's all part of this proposal.
Sorry, who did you say proposed this?
It was brought up to us by the owner of the building at 121 Webster Ave. It's the building where the marijuana facility is on the Webster Ave, and where the old paintball facility was on the other end.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess what's the plan for that building?
I'm sorry?
What's the plan for that building? I guess what's the plan for that building? Didn't they, someone tried to say it was gonna be like an auto body shop for like Tesla or something?
Yeah, at one point he tried to get an amendment to allow for Tesla to repair their vehicles there. It is not something that this department supports, and it was not brought forward.
Can you scroll up one more time? Can you go up one slide?
I'm sorry, one slide. Is that the one you want?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I have no objection. I would like to make a recommendation to,
You make a recommendation to, that the city council approve it as proposed?
correct, to the city council to approve the proposed language regarding indoor commercial recreation.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
No,
Oh, sorry,
I say no.
almost unanimous.
What are you gonna, are you gonna tell us your concerns?
Because, one, I live in that neighborhood.
Can you speak into the,
I live in that neighborhood, and that's not what you want in that ability. You do not want an archaic in there. He's proposing things that are going back into the last century. He's not proposing anything new. He just wants to expand it. There's other things you can do with that building besides put in an archaic and a bowling alley. Nobody's going to put a bowling alley in there. It's like, this is in 1980. We're not going to the IHOP. No.
Okay.
I want something more creative in that space and not putting in a, no.
So approve 5, or recommended 5 to 1 to 0. Okay. Thank you.
John, can I ask a question? Our first case today about the tattoo shop, would it be possible to discuss changing the zoning ordinances to include a tattoo shop as a small business? It was like strange that that case came in front of us.
To allow it by right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the planning board does have the authority to make a recommendation on the zoning amendment, or to present the zoning amendment to the council for review.
Okay. Is there a formal channel that I would go through, or?
The board as a whole would make a vote for me to write up a proposal. I'll give it to you for review, and then you submit it to the council for action.
Is that something we can quickly issue a recommendation on, or?
I'm sorry,
I think you have to put it on the agenda, Eric, so I think you would have to.
Okay, so I actually have to like throw.
So you want to put it on the agenda for next month?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, next is a public hearing, the annual mid-year update for the Community Development Block Grant. Mr. Train.
I'm sorry?
I sent you an updated version a little while ago. Can you access your email? That's all right, I can, the
And
numbers.
that was when did you send it? At 7? I was here. I do not have it. I don't have access to the.
No worries. Do you mind starting on slide 5?
Pardon?
Do you mind starting on slide 5? Perfect. Excellent. So thank you, members of the Planning Board, for allowing us to present a mid-year update tonight on our Community Development Block Grant Program. So my name is Alex Train. I serve as the Director of Housing and Community Development with the City of Chelsea, and I'm joined by Erica McCarthy, our Community Development Manager, and Emily Granoff, our Senior Planner Project Manager, who collectively oversee and deliver CDBG-funded projects and programs. So typically we hold this update to both brief the Planning Board on notable accomplishments and ongoing progress throughout the past year, as well as touch on Planning Board priorities as we're embarking on our new application process for annual funding, which will be due in March of 2023. This process generally kicks off with the Planning Board meeting and then dovetails into a series of public meetings, stakeholder sessions, surveys, and other community outreach throughout the course of the winter. So I'll turn it over to Erica now, who will touch on some of our ongoing CDBG-funded activities in the realm of housing, economic development, infrastructure, and social services. And then we'll end with some discussion around priorities for the upcoming application.
Thank you for having us today. Erica McCarthy, and thanks for that introduction. So Community Development Block Grant CDBG, it's an acronym for the Community Development Block Grant, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. It's authorized by a piece of federal legislation, and for our municipality, it's administered by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And at the moment, we have a couple of open CDBG grants, including the 20th federal fiscal year, which is a year off from our city year, 2020, 2021, and then the joint 2022-2023 grant. So for 2020, we completed 2 infrastructure projects. One was at Chelsea Square, and the other was Cherry Street. The Chelsea Square project.
I'm sorry, Erica, could
Yep.
you pull that closer?
A little closer?
Yeah.
Is that better? The Chelsea Square project ended up totaling $228,920, and the Cherry Street project was $386,292. And there's a little bit more information about the outcomes of the project, the linear square feet that was produced, and the number of folks that are served in those particular block groups. We also had 3 social service projects, Citizenship and Immigration Services, provided by a competitively procured service provider, La Collaborativa, the REACH, which is a youth empowerment program administered by the Chelsea Public Schools, and the English as a Second Language program funded by or administered by the Department of Health and Human Services, Cultural and Recreation Affairs. So the Citizenship and Immigration Services program was $35,500 of CDBG funds, but utilizes some other private funding sources. REACH utilized $25,000 of CDBG and over $480,000 in other public funding sources, and then ESOL used exclusively CDBG funds, and it was $92,500. And we also have an ongoing housing rehab program. Right now we have 2 units under construction that total $170,000. So I'm happy to answer questions about this, or just keep going. Some of the programs are pretty repetitive because this is an ongoing source of funding. So if we go to the next slide, we have our 2021 grant. That we had another infrastructure project. This was $340,000 for CDBG. It was the Shawmut and Chester sidewalk reconstruction project. We had 3 social services, same programs, same funding allotments. We also had a fair housing plan that we'll talk a little bit about later today. That was $70,000, and a housing rehabilitation. When I was writing this presentation, it was for the October meeting, and we hadn't finished the social service programs, which is why they're in blue. But by the end of this quarter, everything will be complete, with the exception of the housing rehab activity. Which brings us to, did you have something? Which brings us to 2022-2023 on the next slide. This year, the state provided a joint NOFA. So instead of offering the $825,000 as an annual allocation, they granted us $1.6 million. And so we kicked off that application process by meeting you folks last year around the same time, presenting an update. We had a public meeting at the Williams School where folks gave their input about our application. We submitted the application in March, were awarded in August, signed the contract in September, and literally within a couple of days, we should receive the approval from the state to move forward with our environmental review. So if we go to the next slide, we have a couple of projects that we'll be working on. We'll have 2 infrastructure projects, one at Clinton Street, one in Addison Street. We have 4 social service programs this go around. The same 3, ESOL, REACH, and Citizenship, and we've added a senior food delivery program, which will be administered by Department of Health and Human Services Senior Center. We also have another planning activity, which will be a strategic housing plan, and we have allocated $217,000 for the acquisition of the affordable housing development at 170 Cottage Street, and that's strictly for acquisition purposes. So as soon as they do that closing, we can transfer that money over. And so that's really where we're at in terms of grants and projects. So.
Great, thanks, Erica. And as Erica mentioned, we applied for this last March. We are just now getting our clearance. Generally, this will be about a 12-month program implementation period. So particularly for the infrastructure projects, we'll be holding community meetings and sessions with neighbors prior to proceeding. And on the housing side, we are excited to be updating our strategic housing plan. We last did a housing plan in 2017. The market has shifted dramatically, and conditions for many residents have markedly worsened. So this plan will kind of outline a blueprint for future affordable and mixed income housing development in the city. So John, can we move on to the next slide?
I'm sorry, to what?
Could we go to the this slide? Perfect. So we can distribute a copy of this presentation afterwards, but we wanted to outline a compilation of ongoing strategic planning, design, engineering, and construction initiatives that are underway across our department's 6 main areas of concentration, including housing and anti-displacement, climate adaptation and sustainability, infrastructure, community development, social infrastructure, and lastly, workforce and economic development. I won't delve too into the weeds on this. If you folks have any particular questions about projects, we're happy to field them now, and we can distribute the presentation afterwards. And happy to come back for an in-depth conversation, but I do want to be mindful of everybody's time.
Not to be that person, but I have to ask, are you guys going to connect the bike path near the Silver Line to the one in Eastie? Is that what that says?
Yes, we're hoping to. So the city, in conjunction with Boston Planning and Development Agency, put forth a $3 million federal grant last month to conduct a planning and design effort to connect the Chelsea Greenway to the East Boston Greenway, ultimately providing Chelsea residents with access to East Boston and the waterfront. We should hopefully hear back on that proposition by the summer of 2024, and that would really set the stage for a concerted effort. In parallel, the grant would allow us to design coastal resilience measures along Eastern Ave, which are currently undergoing design, and this would bring us to final engineering to safeguard flood pathway that leaves many surrounding neighborhoods susceptible to flooding.
That's amazing.
One project that I was expecting to see under climate, but I'm not seeing, is the Island End flood mitigation project. Are there any status updates on that?
Yeah, great question. I tried not to be too redundant with the last year. So presently, the City of Chelsea, through our department, with Emily's leadership, is progressing forward with the final design and engineering of that project in concert with the City of Everett. So currently, we're in the midst of the permitting phase, so we're going through state environmental permitting as well as local permitting activities. Simultaneously, the cities have submitted a federal grant proposal requesting $50 million from FEMA's Building Resilience and Communities program. We've received preliminary feedback from FEMA that our request is being advanced to the award stage, subject to completing pre-award activities, which generally span 18 months to 2 years. So we're heading in the right direction in terms of funding, and presently we're looking to continue design and engineering until that construction funding is secured. So big milestone compared to last year, where we didn't really have construction funding secured or pinned down yet.
My only other comment is I'm excited to see Dever Park on here. I hope that when that design gets underway, that you guys will do some intentional outreach to UBeller, because they bring the kids there every single day.
Definitely, absolutely. No, thank you for that. We're not sure if we're going to approach it through the upcoming CDBG application or through the state park grant program, but we are planning on retaining our landscape architect to begin working with us and the neighborhood on redesign options. It's one of the few parks that the city hasn't renovated over the last 10 years. Excellent. John, do you mind flipping to the next slide? And this is a compilation of ongoing initiatives that span affordable housing development, housing stability and homelessness prevention, climate resilience, economic development, transportation, and workforce. Similarly, happy to answer questions on any particular ongoing initiatives, many of which are multi-year endeavors, as well as follow up with folks after the meeting. All right, so the last item I'll mention tonight is that we will be holding a number of community events and public meetings in support of the CDBG application round. We'll be able to circulate flyers to members of the planning board after the meeting. The next one is scheduled for December 6th at 6 p.m. at the Williams School. We welcome ideas that folks might have as to infrastructure, open space, transportation, and housing projects that could be integral in your neighborhoods. Right now, our CDBG funding restricts usage to Addison Orange, Shirtlift Bellingham, the downtown and the Mill Hill neighborhoods for most projects. But generally speaking, those are the neighborhoods with the highest degree of need. So by the end of the year, we're hoping to start up that community engagement process throughout the course of January, gather input for the upcoming application, and then spend most of February producing the proposal, eventually submitting it at the beginning of March by the application deadline.
What time on the 6th is that? 6 o'clock. Okay, thanks.
I don't think there's any public here. Are there any members of the public who would like to address or comment or ask questions of Mr. Train regarding this presentation? Seeing none. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. Or are you?
That's everything from my end. We wanted to give you kind of an abbreviated version of this tonight, just given the late hour. Of course, happy to discuss further or come back at a subsequent meeting, but thank you for the time.
Are you doing the draft housing plan?
Sure.
I don't have anything on it.
Is there internet available in here?
I sent them the link to the online.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's just so long. It felt like a little luxe to print out so many, but I did bring a copy for everyone.
Excellent. And so, as Erica mentioned earlier, the city allocated CDBG funding to conduct a fair housing plan last year. This has been a 12-month process, culminating with the publication of the draft plan currently out for public comment. The underlying goal of this effort was to analyze housing discrimination and patterns of segregation in the community in order to develop actionable strategies, policies, and programs to advance housing equity. And so this was done through the course of over 10 focus group meetings, multiple affinity group sessions, a survey, as well as a myriad of smaller stakeholder sessions where we gathered input on residents' experiences with both residing in housing stock in Chelsea, looking to rent housing, as well as purchasing homes. In parallel, our consultants analyzed socioeconomic and demographic characteristics of the community and a number of fair housing factors that touched on patterns of discrimination in the community. So all of that culminated with a set of recommendations that we're really proud of that are encompassed in this plan that kind of broadly are categorized into 3 sections, including state policy, local policy, and local projects and programs. The state policy section kind of deals with policies that the city could actively advocate for, which could have a measurably positive impact on residents of Chelsea, particularly residents of color. The local policy section encompasses zoning ideas, local policy that might require home rule petitions, as well as policy that's directly under the control of council and local boards to advance racial equity in the housing market. And then many of the projects and programs look to bolster our fair housing activities in Chelsea, as well as institutionalize funding and support for safety net programming that looks to safeguard the most vulnerable residents. And so some of the recommendations you'll see in there include consideration of transfer fees as a policy that could finance affordable housing in the community. Locally, we are aiming to craft a language justice ordinance, which would require that all housing applications be translated into multiple languages and resource navigation be provided. And then on the programmatic front, recommendations include supporting the Chelsea Housing Authority on redevelopment of their properties, particularly aging, obsolete buildings, as well as piloting our own fair housing testing program that would be integrated in with our housing legal services program that we currently run for eviction prevention. So there are an assortment of other suggestions in the plan, so we're definitely looking for as much public comment as possible in order to hone down those recommendations and begin implementation over the coming year. The other part I'll mention is that you might recall that under the Obama administration, there were federal fair housing requirements that the Trump administration subsequently loosened. Although President Biden has strengthened them to some degree, they're not quite yet back to where they were about a decade ago. But we did prepare this plan with an eye towards the future. In the event that there were robust federal requirements imposed upon the city, would we have a plan that complies with those federal requirements? So we wanted to ensure that this document would satisfy that eventual obligation, as well as be a useful tool for guiding planning and program development for the community. So I don't know, Erica, if there's anything you want to add. Erica shepherded this entire process and put a lot of great work into it, so I do want to thank her for it.
Thank you. The only thing I have to add is just the community engagement piece, if you were interested in hearing kind of like what we did in the community. But the recommendations is the main outcome, and that's kind of the most important piece that we ended up with. But yeah, we had a steering committee with 7 entities, folks from the city and various community agencies. If you go on the website, you'll find all of their information there. We had, like Alex said, a number of focus forums. We had four focus groups. 2 were open to the general public. 1 was open to seniors and veterans, and 1 was open to youth, which was a really exciting group to work with. What else did we have here? We had a number of 6 interviews, and then we attended 3 community meetings at Green Roots, TND, and the like. And yeah, we're just wrapping up our public comment period right now. So it's been open for public comment for the month of November. December is the last day. There's a form on the city website if you are interested in providing your input or encouraging others to do that too. We also had a survey that we put out about the recommendations. So the ones that really rose to the top were the ones that were identified by folks in the community as really imperative in combination with staff and other leaders in the field. So we definitely made an effort to really engage with folks. It felt really important for this type of project.
I thought it was great. I think you did a great job, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I was really happy to see, especially around advocating for various things at the state level. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was a couple of weeks ago since I looked at it, there was something about inspectional services and being able to make anonymous complaints, and I think that's really important for residents, that they can make complaints to ISD anonymously so that they don't have to fear retaliation from their landlord. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all those processes revamped too.
Great, thank you.
I guess, was there any language for landlords in there? I guess for protection for landlords?
So the plan doesn't deal directly with like legal protections around landlords, but we did hone in on kind of community education and the intersection of community education and landlords. So for instance, we've been looking to convene a landlord kind of roundtable that can be a forum for folks to share best practices and work with, housing agencies, social service partners, and the city to, forestall evictions and ensure that, both, landlords are getting paid and ultimately people aren't getting displaced. So you'll see recommendations like that which try to strike that balance between, the economics of real estate and protecting, tenants' rights and people's rights against being discriminated against.
Yeah, just, I think there's some stat like 90% of landlords are just small mom and pop landlords, and I think obviously there's a lot of bad landlords, but there's also good ones too. And I guess the good ones should be recognized in some shape or form. And I know there's a lot of times where they are taken advantage of by some tenants who obviously are not paying and whatnot. So I wasn't sure if there were any programs around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we deal with this in the section of the plan that looks to institutionalize funding for many of the housing stability programs that are ongoing or planned over the coming year. But one of the major programs that City Council has invested over $750,000 in partnership with our Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board has been a homeowner stabilization and small landlord program, kind of targeting the owners of 1 to 4 unit properties. So it covers, mortgage payments, utility assistance, property tax relief, and ultimately, if tenants fall behind, it can also provide compensation to the landlords to cover those costs. So looking at, Chelsea as a broader mix, we recognize that real estate is one of the only ways for many communities of color to build wealth and equity, and being able to provide both those types of safety net resources combined with programs like down payment assistance for residents that want to purchase, 2 or 3 unit properties to begin generating income and building wealth are all important facets of it. So it does have that type of nuance in it, although it doesn't, find itself directly in a landlord-specific chapter. But because there are a lot of owner-occupied landlords in the city, we have tried to be deliberate around crafting programs to serve that population.
And I guess the funds that you mentioned, are those on the state level or?
Those are a local program that our department administers. So property owners can apply directly through the Office of Department of Housing Community Development or through Chelsea Restoration Corp. Down at 150 Pearl Street.
Okay, and I guess, does that budget usually run out each year, or or is there usually just a surplus?
So we've been operating off of a one-time allocation. We'll be returning to City Council in January or February to replenish that. In the last year, we've spent around, I don't want to give you an exact number, but roughly $500,000 of those funds, whereas the other $500,000 were spent in 2022. We're also looking to continue our partnerships with the Volunteer Lawyers Project, who provide pro bono legal services for low and moderate income homeowners and low and moderate income small landlords, as well as continue a lot of that community education that I was mentioning.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right, thank you all. Hope you have a good evening.
Come again.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn? Is there a motion to
I'll
adjourn?
make a motion
Right,
to
yeah.
adjourn.
I'll second it.
She just made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.